Chapter 1683. After leaving the White Dragon God's tomb, Ji Tianxing continued to climb to the peak. About 3,000 meters away, there was an equally majestic black tomb. At this point, Ji Tianxing had already reached the peak, and the pressure he was enduring was even more terrifying. His physical strength was already exhausted, and he was constantly overdrawing his potential. His mind was also extremely tired. The formless pressure made it impossible for him to straighten his back, and he could only lower his head and move his feet while drenched in sweat. He would not give up until he saw Kenshin's tomb. After 2 whole hours, he finally managed to walk the distance of 3,000 feet and arrived at the foot of the divine mausoleum. The black tomb was 300 meters wide, and it exuded an ancient and majestic aura. Ji Tianxing observed it for a moment and discovered that the soil and rocks of the tomb were covered with traces of time. It was obvious that this was an ancient tomb that had at least 30,000 years of history. On the 150-meter-tall black tombstone, there were a few lines of dark golden ancient words that had long since faded. Ji Tianxing carefully observed them for a long time before he could recognize them. The seven-eyed Divine Lord was one of the ancient human sages. He was born in Shunwu continent, and his life is unknown. After the War of the Gods, the seven-eyed Divine Lord appeared out of nowhere and used his invincible might to exterminate countless demons, leading the human race to counterattack. In the end, the seven-eyed Divine Lord did not hesitate to sacrifice himself and perish together with his enemies. He fell at the end of the War of the Gods. After reading the introduction of the tomb owner, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with disappointment. What disappointed him was not the seven-eyed Divine Lord's experience, but that this tomb did not belong to Kenshin. He did not waste any time trying to sense the tomb of the seven-eyed Divine Lord. After turning around and leaving, he continued to walk towards the peak. There were 2 more tombs on the peak. One was to the right, about 5,000 meters away. The other was in the middle of the peak, about 3,000 meters away. The middle tomb stood at the highest point of the peak, and it was also the tomb that occupied the most space in the mausoleum and had the most sacred and majestic aura. Ji Tianxing pondered for a moment and decided to check out the tomb on the right. It was merely a distance of over 500 feet, but it took him more than an hour to walk. His strength was severely overdrawn. His eyes had already turned black, and he was seeing stars. His breathing was also extremely heavy. Even his thoughts and consciousness started to become muddled and blurry. Shaw. Finally, he arrived near the divine tomb. From more than 100 feet away, he raised his head with difficulty and observed the tomb of the god of sin. Grey-brown rocks and hard soil piled up to form this ancient and plain tomb. A vast and boundless aura emanated from the tomb of the god of sin, as if it had brought him back to the ancient times. After a few glances, he was able to determine that this was an ancient tomb with a history of more than 30,000 years. Sure enough, there were a few rows of dark golden ancient characters inscribed on the pitch-black tombstone. Heavenly Wolf Divine Lord, one of the ancient demon sages. He was born in the profound sky continent and died at the end of the Great War of the Gods. When he saw this, Ji Tianxing felt even more disappointed. To think that another ancient god would fall in the Great War of the Gods, he turned to leave the Heavenly Wolf Divine Lord's tomb and looked at the tomb of the god of sin at the highest point of the mountain. Could it be that the most sacred and majestic tomb is the tomb of Kenshin? If that really is the tomb of Kenshin, then what's the difference between it and my Kenshin Yin-Yang tomb? As this thought flashed through his mind, a deep sense of expectation welled up in his heart. He moved his feet with difficulty and inched toward the tomb of the god of sin. The short distance of over 10,000 feet was like an insurmountable moat to him. This section of the road was covered with fine stones, which were formed after the ancient rocks weathered and scattered on the ground. There were also many large rocks and dozens of ravines and holes. Normally, these obstacles would not have affected Ji Tianxing. Even mortals who did not practice martial arts would be able to easily cross it. However, Ji Tianxing's strength was almost exhausted. He was on the verge of unconsciousness and collapse. He almost closed his eyes and staggered as he inched forward. Like a baby who had just learned how to walk, after tripping over a ravine, he found it difficult to stand up and could only continue to crawl forward. When he could no longer crawl, He lay on the ground and rested for a moment. After recovering some strength, he continued to crawl forward. Incomparably tenacious willpower tenaciously supported him. He clenched his teeth and refused to give up. At the foot of the mountain, the old man of sin quietly watched all of this. At the beginning, when he saw Ji Tianxing reach the summit, he was rather gratified and excited. After all, Ji Tianxing had created a miracle and successfully reached the summit. He had reached a height that no one had reached in thousands of years. The old man of sin was also looking forward to seeing what Ji Tianxing would gain. But now, Ji Tianxing had exhausted all his strength and was on the verge of collapse and unconsciousness. But he was still tenaciously holding on. Even if he had to crawl, he still had to slowly climb to the summit. Even the old man of sin, whose heart was as calm as water, could not help but be moved. A complicated look appeared in his turbid eyes. There was admiration, shock, and a strong sense of doubt. What kind of belief has supported him until now? What goal has made him risk everything to reach the summit? The old man of sin could not guess or understand. He could only quietly wait for the results to appear. About 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing finally walked the distance of more than 10,000 feet and arrived at the sacred tomb of the god of sin on the mountain peak. At this time, he was already covered in blood and mud, and his hair and clothes were in a mess. His skin and flesh had been cut by the sharp rocks on the ground, and he was covered in crisscrossing wounds from which blood flowed. But he could no longer feel pain, and his eyes were covered by blood, sweat, and mud. He lay on the ground panting for a long time before he struggled to support his body and stand up little by little. This place was located at the highest point of the mountain and was also the core of the cemetery of the gods. The tomb in front of him covered an area of 9,000 feet and was even larger than a divine palace. The pitch-black stone tablet in front of the tomb was 1,000 feet tall. Without a doubt, the god buried in this tomb was definitely the leader of the gods. Ji Tianxing raised his head with difficulty, opened his blurry eyes, and looked up at the huge tombstone. He looked at it for a long time before he could clearly see the ancient words on the tombstone. Divine King Naka Light, the leader of the ancient sages, the king of the gods who dominated the galaxy and ruled over thousands of gods. Born in ancient times, legend has it that she was transformed from the Polaris star. She was born extraordinary and was born a god. Chapter 1684. Ji Tianxing looked up at the pitch-black tombstone as his expression and gaze became extremely mixed. He had never imagined that this divine tomb that stood at the peak of the mountain, the head of all gods, was actually the tomb of God King Naka Light. It's actually not Kenshin's tomb. Kenshin was once conferred the title of God King, ruling over tens of thousands of gods. After his death, the tomb should have appeared here. But I've seen countless tombs from the foot of the mountain, but I haven't found Kenshin's tomb. What's going on here? Ji Tianxing was filled with questions, unable to understand why. However, he also understood that it was only natural that God King Naka Light's tomb stood at the peak of the mountain and was revered as the head of all gods. After all, not only was Naka Light the ruler of all gods, but she was also the founder of this world's civilization. Without Naka Light's teachings and protection, who knew when the living beings of this world would gain intelligence and grasp cultivation methods? Naka Light's contributions to this world were definitely the greatest since ancient times. After a moment of thought, Ji Tianxing roused himself and did his best to release his consciousness as he probed the Naka Light divine tomb. He really wanted to know if Naka Light's tomb contained any divine power or divine legacy. Naka Light was the legendary goddess Naka Light, known as the ruler and creator of this world. Now that goddess Naka Light's tomb was at the peak of the mausoleum, it meant that goddess Naka Light had indeed died. However, Yun Yarrow had fused with the Neptunian divine pearl and become Naka Light's reincarnation. Ji Tianxing calculated that if he could obtain goddess Naka Light's divine power or legacy, it would definitely be extremely beneficial to Yun Yarrow. His consciousness entered the divine tomb bit by bit, exploring deeper into the divine tomb. A full 30 minutes passed, but he did not discover anything. He did not sense any presence of divine power. Is it because too much time has passed? Even if goddess Naka Light left behind her divine power and legacy, it has dissipated over the years. Ji Tianxing thought in doubt as he continued probing, unwilling to give up. As time passed, his consciousness became more and more blurry as he became mentally exhausted. An hour later, he finally detected a very obscure divine power aura hidden in the depths of the divine tomb. His heart was filled with joy, and he recklessly probed that aura. However, before he could find out what the aura was, he blacked out and fainted. At this point, he was already at the end of his rope. All of his strength and mind had been overdrawn. He collapsed powerlessly and slowly fell to the ground, falling unconscious. At the foot of the mountain, Old Man Godly Ruins was watching him. Seeing him fall unconscious on the ground, Old Man Godly Ruins waved his hand and shot out a dazzling golden light. Shua. The golden light condensed into a giant palm that wrapped around Ji Tianxing and dragged him back to the front of Old Man God. Old Man Godly Ruins held up Ji Tianxing with one hand and murmured with a complicated expression, "I didn't think that this kid would create a miracle that hasn't happened in thousands of years." He was able to climb to the top of the mountain and reach the tomb of the King of Gods. Unfortunately, the one-day time limit is up. With that, Old Man Godly Ruins carried Ji Tianxing and turned to leave the cemetery of the gods. He stepped on the void, crossed the dark sky, and returned the way he came. During this process, boundless azure wood divine power surged out of his palm and poured into Ji Tianxing's body. The rich azure light contained an incomparably sacred and powerful power. After a short 100 breaths, the azure wood divine power filled Ji Tianxing's body and healed his magic power and injuries. Originally, Ji Tianxing had exhausted his strength and overdrawn his potential and mind. He would have been unconscious for 2 or 3 months, and his body and soul would have suffered indelible injuries, which would have affected his martial arts foundation and talent. However, after being repaired by the azure wood divine power, not only did he recover, his strength also quietly increased. Old Man Godly Ruins stood in the sky above the wasteland and let go of Ji Tianxing. About half a quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianxing slowly woke up. Huff, he let out a long breath and gradually opened his eyes. Waves of exhaustion and weakness came from his body and soul, making him lie in the air and not want to move. This was the after-effect of overdrawing his strength and mind, and it would take some time to subside. Ji Tianxing saw Old Man Godly Ruins in front of him and found himself floating in the sky above the wasteland. He slowly stood up. He turned his head to look at the mountain range at the end of the wasteland and awkwardly asked Old Man Godly Ruins, "Senior, is it time?" Old Man Godly Ruins nodded slightly. Ji Tianxing revealed a regretful expression and a trace of disappointment flashed through his eyes. "I have already checked the divine power in Goddess Yaoguang's tomb, but unfortunately, I fainted before I could check it out." He thought to himself that if he had the chance in the future, he would definitely come again. After all, the divine power or inheritance left behind by Goddess Yaoguang was too important to Yun Yao. He sighed with melancholy and bowed to Old Man Godly Ruins. He said in a sincere tone, "Thank you for saving me, Senior." Old Man Godly Ruins nodded and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and sent out a white light. The white light condensed into a huge door of light that floated in the sky. Old Man Godly Ruins looked at Ji Tianxing and calmly said, "Little guy, since you know that this is an abandoned world, you should have a certain understanding of ancient legends. This old man wants to know what you will do if you can reach the martial god realm in the future." Ji Tianxing didn't know why Old Man Godly Ruins asked this. But he replied without hesitation, "Naturally, I will investigate the ancient matters and do my best to find a way to break through the seal of the world." Old Man Godly Ruins calmly nodded and said, "This old man looks forward to the next time I see you, to what extent you will have grown. Follow your heart and do your best to pursue the peak of the martial path. Go." With that, he waved his hand at Ji Tianxing. "Senior, wait a moment." Ji Tianxing didn't want to leave and unwillingly asked, "Senior, I have a question and I hope you can answer it for me." "What is it?" Old Man Godly Ruins looked at him and asked in a low voice. Ji Tianxing frowned and said, "I believe you also know that 1,000 years ago, the famous Kenshin fell. Kenshin came from this world and ascended to the upper realm to become a divine king. Logically speaking, after Kenshin fell, a tomb should have appeared here and it should have been on the mountain peak. But I didn't find Kenshin's tomb on the mountain peak." Old Man Godly Ruins fell silent. After a long while, he said faintly, "If the sword god has fallen, then his tomb will definitely appear on the peak of the mountain. Since it's not on the mountain peak, it means he might not have really fallen." With that, Old Man Godly Ruins turned and flew toward the cemetery of the gods. Ji Tianxing stood in the air and frowned in confusion as he watched Old Man Godly Ruins disappear. Kenshin didn't really fall? What does that mean? Chapter 1685. Swoosh. With a flash of light, Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared and left the ruins of God. The next moment, light returned to his eyes and he was back on the ancient viewing platform. Around the ancient viewing platform, the gods' disciples of the three divine kingdoms had not left yet. They were divided into 3 groups and were discussing something in a low voice. Seeing Ji Tianxing suddenly appear, everyone stopped talking and looked at him in unison. Ji Tianxing is out. The one-day deadline is finally up. He really came out. I wonder what Ji Tianxing has found after entering the ruins of God. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing expectantly and observed his changes. However, after the god's disciples checked his strength, they were a little disappointed and confused. Strange, Ji Tianxing doesn't seem to have changed. Did he not find anything in the ruins of God? Since ancient times, there have been many geniuses who have entered the ruins of God, but not everyone has found anything. Many people have returned empty-handed. If that's the case, then we have waited for nothing. On the surface, Ji Tianxing did not seem to have changed. The greenwood divine power that the old man of God had transferred to him was hidden in his limbs and bones, silently nourishing and strengthening his body. With the strength of the god's disciples, they could not see the hidden divine power at all. Only the great guardian, Guardian Yang, and Granny Long could see the clues. Moreover, the 3 experts knew very well that Ji Tianxing most likely had found something and would not return empty-handed. However, what he had found might be divine power, divine Tao inheritance, or divine artifacts and Dharma treasures. These were all things that could not be seen at the moment. Ji Tianxing ignored the attention and discussion of the god's disciples and walked toward Yun Yaro. Yun Yaro stood quietly in the crowd and looked at Ji Tianxing gently. When Ji Tianxing stood in front of her, Yiqing Luo, Lu Xiaomeng and the 2 young men all tactfully retreated. Ji Tianxing looked at Yun Yaro and said with a smile, "Yaro Yaro, I'm back. Now that the matter is settled, I can finally talk to you properly. It's good that you're safe." Yun Yaro looked him up and down a few times. Seeing that he was unharmed, she was relieved. "Tianxing, did you gain anything from entering the ruins of God?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a complicated expression, "Of course there are gains, and they are very special. But we'll talk about this later. Now, I want to discuss something with you." Yun Yaro nodded slightly and said gently, "Okay, go ahead." Ji Tianxing used a secret sound transmission technique and said to her, "I'm now the #1 god's disciple in the vast god nation, but you're cultivating in the Luo Shui god nation. We're separated by the entire Heaven's End god nation. It wasn't easy for me to find you and finally reunite with you. I don't want to be separated from you again." Yun Yaro nodded and said, "Me too." Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, "Yaro Yaro, are you willing to leave the Luo Shui god nation and accompany me?" "Of course I am." Yun Yaro nodded without hesitation, but explained with a complicated expression, "But I can't leave the Luo Shui god nation yet." "Why?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked with concern, "Did the Luo Shui martial god restrict you in some way?" "That's not it." Yun Yaro shook her head and said with a complicated expression, "The Luo Shui martial god has treated me well. Moreover, it's more helpful for my cultivation if I stay in the Luo Shui god nation. In the past year, I was able to increase my strength rapidly because I awakened my talent and potential. In my mind, the memories of Goddess Yaoguang often appear." Ji Tianxing roughly understood what she meant and nodded. "In that case, it's better for you to stay in the Luo Shui god nation." "What about you?" Yun Yaro looked worried and asked, "You're going back to the vast god nation? When can we meet again?" Ji Tianxing smiled and reached out to hold her hand. He said gently, "I'm not going back to the vast god nation. I'm going to the Luo Shui god nation with you. People say that the people of the Luo Shui god nation are the kindest. I don't think the Luoshui God Nation will reject me, right? Yun Yarrow was stunned for a moment, and a look of disbelief appeared on her face. She asked in surprise, Tianxing, are you really going to follow me to the Luoshui God Nation? But how will you explain to the vast God Nation? You're the number one God disciple. Will martial God Taihao allow you to leave? Ji Tianxing shook his head and comforted her. Don't worry. Before I came to the ruins of God, I've already talked to martial God Taihao. He has already agreed. Yun Yarrow was relieved and nodded. In that case, there shouldn't be a problem. It's just that you're the number one God disciple in the vast God Nation and enjoy the best resources and treatment. I'm afraid that you'll be wronged when you return to the Luoshui God Nation with me. Before she could finish, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said confidently, with my talent and strength, how could I be wronged? That's true. Yun Yarrow nodded as a proud smile appeared in her eyes. At this moment, Guardian Yang cupped his hands and bowed to Granny Long and the Great Guardian. The 5 God disciples of the Heaven End God Nation were also ready, following behind Guardian Yang. Under everyone's gaze, Guardian Yang took out a flying boat. He brought the 5 God's disciples into the flying ship and flew into the sky at lightning speed. Soon, they were far away. After the people of the Heaven End God Nation left, the Great Guardian also said goodbye to Granny Long. Then, he looked at Ji Tianxing and said loudly, Tianxing, we should go back. Qin Songqiong, Song Zhanyu, Wu Qian and Jiang Ningxue all stood behind the Great Guardian and looked at Ji Tianxing quietly. Ji Tianxing turned his head and looked at everyone. He hesitated and didn't say anything. Yun Yarrow held his hand and said gently, Tianxing, since you've already made your decision, go and say goodbye to them. Okay, wait for me here. Ji Tianxing nodded and walked towards the Great Guardian. When he came in front of the Great Guardian, he said apologetically, Great Guardian, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I can't go back to Mount God Bestowment with you. Qin Songqiong, Wu Qian and the others were stunned. They couldn't believe it. The Great Guardian seemed to have expected this and wasn't surprised. Tianxing, are you really going to Luoshui God Nation to be with your wife? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, when I first entered Mount God Bestowment, I was looking for her. Now that my wish has been fulfilled, of course, I'll stay with her forever. Sigh. The Great Guardian sighed and said, Tianxing, I know you're a man of character and you're loyal to your feelings. However, you're the number one God disciple of the vast God Nation and the son of God that the God Master values the most. If you go to Luoshui God Nation, you'll lose the glory and treatment you had before. It might affect your future martial arts. Ji Tianxing smiled and said calmly, Thank you for your concern, Great Guardian. However, I've already made up my mind. You don't have to persuade me anymore. To me, it doesn't matter where I cultivate. My martial arts future is in my own hands and I don't need to rely on external resources. My wife is my most precious other half. As long as I can be with her and protect her day and night, nothing else matters. Hearing his words, the Great Guardian, Qin Songqiong, Song Zhanyu and the others fell silent. Everyone's expression was very complicated. They sighed for him, but at the same time, they admired him. Chapter 1686. It was only today that Jiang Ningxue realized how devoted Ji Tianxing was to his love. At this moment, she was extremely envious of Yun Yarrow. She was able to receive all of Ji Tianxing's love, and he was so loyal to her. This was the kind of love that Jiang Ningxue had always dreamed of. A couple for life. Together, they will live and prosper together. Perhaps, only a goddess like Yun Yarrow is worthy of Ji Tianxing's heart. Jiang Ningxue sighed with bitterness in her heart. The Great Guardian, Song Zhanyu, and the others all looked at Ji Tianxing with complicated expressions. They did not know what to say. Qin Songqiong, on the other hand, was very carefree. He cupped his fists towards Ji Tianxing and smiled. Senior brother Ji, I admire your devotion. However, if you leave like this and give me the position of the first God's disciple, will you be unhappy? This was the first time he called Ji Tianxing senior brother. This showed that he admired Ji Tianxing from the bottom of his heart. Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. I am just a passerby. You are the best candidate for the position of the first God's disciple. Wu Qiu looked at him with reluctance. He cupped his fists and said, "Young Master Ji, Wu Qiu will never forget the help you gave me back then. Since you have made up your mind, Wu Qiu will not try to persuade you anymore. I only hope that you will be able to live a peaceful life with Miss Yunyao after you go to the Luotian God Kingdom." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He reminded him, "I will only be leaving for a short period of time. Perhaps after many years, I will return to Mount God Bestowment. You have to cultivate diligently. If I see you again in the future and you are too weak, don't tell me that you know me." Wu Qiu smiled and shook his head. "Don't worry, young Master Ji. With your words, I will cultivate diligently even if I have to risk my life. I look forward to the day we meet again. When that day comes, I will tell you a secret." "What secret?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and looked at him with interest. A playful smile appeared on Wu Qiu's face. He pretended to be mysterious. "Of course, I cannot tell you now. I will tell you when we meet again." "All right." Ji Tianxing smiled helplessly. He nodded and said, "Let's talk about it in the future then." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands at the Great Guardian and said, "Great Guardian, I'll take my leave now." The Great Guardian nodded and said Ji Tianji, green, to be Tianji Tianji. Tianji Tianji was Tianji 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 Tianji, Tianji 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 Tianji. Ji Tianxing stopped and turned around to look at her. He asked calmly, "Miss Jiang, what's the matter?" Jiang Ningxue looked at him with a complicated look in her eyes. She said with a bitter tone, "You're leaving, but you won't even say goodbye to me." "Oh." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Miss Jiang, then I'll take my leave." Jiang Ningxue was a bit embarrassed, but she still summoned her courage and said, "Wait. Young Master Ji, don't you have anything else to say to me?" Ji Tianxing stared at her for a moment before he sternly said, "You are a beautiful woman, but you are associated with lowly people. If this goes on for a long time, you will certainly hurt yourself. It will be too late to regret." Jiang Ningxue hurriedly explained, "Young Master Ji, I know you're still hung up over what happened back then, but I've already made up my mind to never associate with that person again." That's good." Ji Tianxing nodded and said sincerely, "You're such a beautiful woman, why do you care about me? If you meet a man you like in the future, just marry him." A bitter smile flashed across Jiang Ningxue's eyes. She murmured in a low voice, "If I didn't meet you, it might be possible. But now that I've met you, why would I like another man?" Ji Tianxing frowned and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. Miss Jiang, please use your time to clear your memories. After a long time, when your memories fade away, you'll let it go. My wife is still waiting for me. Goodbye." Then, he turned around and left without looking back. Jiang Ningxue looked at his back sadly. She smiled bitterly and sighed in her heart, "Once I meet Tianxing, I'll miss him forever. Once I don't meet him, I'll miss him forever." Qin Sangqiong, Song Zhanyu, and Wu Qian were secretly sizing her up and shaking their heads. Only now did they realize that Jiang Ningxue had already fallen deeply in love with Ji Tianxing. But who could say for sure when it came to love? The Great Guardian did not feel anything. He calmly took out his flying boat. "All right, it's time for us to go." Then, he led Song Zhanyu, Jiang Ningxue, and the others into the flying boat and flew up into the sky. After the Great Guardian and the others left, only Ji Tianxing and the 6 people from the Luoshui God Nation were left on the ancient viewing platform. When Ji Tianxing returned to Yunyaro had just finished talking with Grandma Long. She smiled and walked up to Ji Tianxing, holding his arm naturally. Then, she walked up to Grandma Long and introduced them. "Tianxing, this is Grandma Long, the Great Guardian of the Luoshui God Mountain. Grandma Long, this is Ji." Before Yunyaro could finish, Grandma Long interrupted her. She smiled happily and said, "There's no need for introductions. I already know that Ji Tianxing is your husband." Grandma Long had a kind look on her face. Her smile was especially happy and gratified. She looked at Ji Tianxing with sparkling eyes as if she had seen a rare treasure. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and said calmly, "Junior Ji Tianxing greets Grandma Long. What do you think?" "Of course I agree." Grandma Long smiled and nodded. She said confidently, "Kid, I'm more than happy that you're willing to come to our Luo Shui God Nation. Sigh, I didn't expect such a surprise to come so suddenly. Just now, I was envious of the great guardian. I didn't expect the vast God Nation to have such a monstrous genius like you. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, you would become the son-in-law of our Luo Shui God Nation. This is too surprising. Although I haven't reported this matter to the Divine Lord, I can still make the decision to agree. Tianxing, don't worry, I will take care of you like how I take care of Yun Yarrow in the future. Grandma Long was very emotional. She said so much in one breath, as if she was afraid that Ji Tianxing would go back on his word. Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaoming, and the others were dumbfounded as they listened. They looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. After a while, when they came back to their senses, they exclaimed in disbelief. Oh my God! Ji Tianxing, you want to join our Luo Shui God Nation? I can't believe it. You gave up the glory and identity of the number one God's disciple for love. So this is the power of love. I believe in love again. The two young men were still calm. Yi Qingluo and Lu Xiaoming were extremely emotional. It took them a while to calm down. Grandma Long and Ji Tianxing chatted for a while and then introduced a few God's disciples to him so that they could get to know each other. This is Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow's husband. I don't think I need to introduce him, right? From today onwards, Yun Yarrow is your big senior sister and Ji Tianxing is your big senior brother. Tianxing, this is Yi Qingluo and this is Lu Xiaoming. This is Zhu Bin and this is Wenren Yu. Chapter 1687. An ice blue flying boat sped across the sky towards the east. The airship was 100 feet long and it was very spacious. There was a spacious hall with a dozen rooms and secret rooms. At that moment, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and the rest were gathered in the luxurious hall. The floor of the hall was paved with spiritual jade and the surrounding walls were inlaid with gemstone lamps that shone brightly. Granny Long sat in the main seat while Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and Yi Qingluo sat on the left side of the hall. Lu Xiaoming, Zhu Bin, and Wenren Yu sat on the right side. Ji Tianxing had a preliminary understanding of the few God's disciples through the previous introduction and the short contact they had. Among the 5 God disciples, Yun Yarrow was the strongest. She had reached the 7th level of the primordial soul realm and was everyone's eldest senior sister. Apart from her, the other 4 God disciples had reached the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. Yi Qingluo, who was ranked 2nd, was tall and wore a green dress. Her face was fair and delicate, and she had a virtuous and elegant temperament. Zhu Bin, who was ranked 3rd, was a tall and elegant young master. He was a man of few words and seemed to be shrewd and insightful. Wenren Yu, who was ranked 4th, wore a white robe. He was thin and handsome. He had a kind face and was more extroverted. However, he had a noble aura that was unique to ancient clans. As for Lu Xiaoming, who was ranked 5th, she was a petite girl with a cute face. 2 small dimples appeared on her fair cheeks when she smiled. Ji Tianxing did not know much about the group since it was his first time meeting them. He only observed their expressions and actions silently and did not take the initiative to strike up a conversation. At that moment, Granny Long said kindly, "Everyone, you must help each other on Luotian Mountain in the future and improve together under the glory of the Divine Master. Although Ji Tianxing is a new God disciple, you must respect him as your eldest senior brother. You must not secretly exclude or criticize him. You are the God disciples selected from many geniuses. Not only are you the most talented, but you are also the most upright. If anyone dares to disobey my orders, don't blame me for using the law." Granny Long's tone was not harsh, but it had an unquestionable majesty. The God apostles nodded their heads to show that they understood. Lu Xiaoming, who was the youngest, stuck out her tongue and said, "Granny Long, you worry too much. Senior brother Ji is the number 1 genius of the 3 kingdoms. How would we dare to bully him? Even if we have the guts, we don't have the ability." Wenren Yu nodded and said with a smile, "Junior Marshal Sister Xiao Meng is right. Senior Marshal Brother Ji is a heavenly genius. We don't have the ability to suppress him. Heaven Absolute Divine Nation's Huang Qi was the best example. That Huang Qi is so outstanding, But when he met senior apprentice brother Ji, didn't he still end up dejected and in a sorry state? Hearing his words, everyone chuckled. Zhu Bin nodded in agreement and said with a solemn expression, "Not only is senior martial brother Ji's strength outstanding, but he is also eldest senior martial sister's husband. Together, they are the role model and leader of all God disciples. Who dares to bully them?" Seeing that no one was against Ji Tianxing, Granny Long was relieved. She nodded with a smile and said, "That's good. I am relieved that all of you can get along well." Then, she looked at Ji Tianxing kindly and asked, "Tianxing, you are new here and you have the reputation of being the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms. Everyone is curious about you. Do you have anything you want to say to everyone?" Yun Yarrow and the God Apostles turned their heads to look at Ji Tianxing with kind eyes. Ji Tianxing thought for a while and said calmly, "Junior martial brothers and sisters, if you have any problems in the future, you can come to me. If I can help you, I will do my best." These 2 sentences of his immediately won everyone's favorable impression. Yi Qingluo, Wenren Yu, and the others nodded with a smile and said, "Thank you, senior martial brother Ji. If we have any problems, we will definitely come to you." Lu Xiaomeng's big eyes looked around and she suddenly thought of something. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile and said jokingly, "Senior martial brother Ji, there is no need to wait for the future. I have a question now and I want to ask you." Everyone turned their heads to look at her and teased her with a smile. "Xiaomeng is the one with the most ideas. Junior martial sister Xiaomeng, you are really not polite with senior martial brother Ji." Ji Tianxing nodded at Lu Xiaomeng and said, "Junior martial sister Xiaomeng, ask away." Lu Xiaomeng immediately revealed a sly smile, and 2 small dimples appeared on her pretty face. "Senior martial brother Ji, can you tell us what it is like in the ruins of God? Did you find anything in the ruins of God?" Hearing this question, the God Apostles looked expectant. Even Granny Long looked at Ji Tianxing and said with a smile, "Xiaomeng, you have hit the nail on the head. To be honest, I would like to know too. However, this is related to Tianxing's privacy. If he doesn't want to tell us, don't force him." Ji Tianxing didn't want to tell the truth, but seeing everyone's expectant eyes, he smiled and said, "The ruins of God is actually an alternate dimension and a cemetery. There were countless tombs in the mausoleum, where the gods of various races were buried since ancient times. As for what I found in the ruins of God, it is not worth mentioning. It can't help me increase my strength at all." Hearing this, everyone had a better understanding of the ruins of God. As for what he found, he didn't want to talk about it and the others didn't ask anymore. Next, Lu Xiaomeng and Yi Qingluo asked a few more questions. These questions had nothing to do with martial arts cultivation. They were all gossip about life and relationships. For example, Yi Qingluo asked Ji Tianxing how he met Yun Yarrow and how he captured Yun Yarrow's heart. Lu Xiaomeng's questions were even more tricky. She asked if Ji Tianxing was afraid of his wife. Would he want a son or a daughter in the future? These quirky questions amused everyone to the point of snickering endlessly, and the atmosphere became extremely lively and cheerful. Yun Yarrow didn't feel embarrassed or angry. She just looked at Ji Tianxing quietly and waited for his answer. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing used his outstanding wisdom and reaction to deal with these questions. Everyone chatted in the hall for half a day and closed the distance between them. It was late at night that everyone returned to their rooms to rest. Ji Tianxing followed Yun Yarrow back to her room. The 2 hugged each other intimately for a while before they began to talk about business. Only now did Ji Tianxing tell Yun Yarrow about his experience and knowledge in the ruins of God with a serious expression. In the cemetery of the gods, there are hundreds of tombs lined up from the foot of the mountain to the peak. I found the tomb of the white dragon god and saved a wisp of his remnant soul. Unfortunately, I didn't find Kenshin's tomb. Old man of the ruins of God said that Kenshin didn't really die. However, I saw the tomb of the Jade Light God King on the mountain peak. Chapter 1688. After listening to Ji Tianxing's story, Yun Yarrow was rather shocked. She pondered for a moment before saying, 8,000 years ago, Kenshin and Divine Lord White Dragon perished one after another. Divine Lord White Dragon's tomb is in the ruins of gods, but Kenshin's tomb isn't there. If things are as Old Man Godly Ruins said, The ruins of gods are the greatest secret in the world. As long as a god of this world perishes, a tomb will appear in the ruins of gods. This means that Kenshin didn't really perish. Perhaps he will be like other gods, leaving behind a wisp of his remnant soul. He will awaken and be reborn, or reincarnated. At this point, Yun Yaro stared at Ji Tianxing and said in a serious tone, "Tianxing, have you ever thought that you are actually?" Ji Tianxing nodded and revealed a playful smile. "I've actually suspected this question a long time ago, but unfortunately, I've never been able to verify it. In the past year or so, memories of Kenshin would often appear in the depths of my soul. I believe this is not a coincidence. There must be a reason." Yun Yaro nodded slightly and comforted him. "Don't worry. The truth will surface sooner or later. Perhaps when you are strong enough, you will be able to solve the mystery." Ji Tianxing acknowledged and stopped discussing the topic. "I saw divine monarch Naka Light's tomb at the peak of the cemetery of the gods. I tried to communicate with the tomb, and after a long time, I sensed that there was a divine power aura hidden in the tomb. Unfortunately, before I could figure out what the divine power was, I expended too much energy and fainted. When I woke up, the one-day deadline was up. Old Man Godly Ruins sent me out of the ruins of gods. Sigh. What a pity. If I could obtain that divine power aura, it would definitely be of great benefit to you." Yun Yaro held his hands and said calmly, "You have already done your best. Don't blame yourself or feel regret." Old Man Godly Ruins also said that everything depends on fate. Perhaps it's because your opportunity hasn't arrived yet, that's why you can't obtain that ball of divine power. However, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely enter the ruins of gods personally to take a look at God King Nacrolite's tomb." Ji Tianxing smiled. "Now that you are the reincarnation of the Nacrolite goddess, if you can reach her tomb, you'll definitely be able to obtain that ball of divine power." "Yes." Yun Yaro nodded slightly and said calmly, "We can't rush this matter. I've only just awakened some memories of Goddess Yaoguang, and my strength is increasing rapidly. In a few more years, when I become stronger and awaken more memories, I might have more confidence in going to the ruins of God. Let's not talk about this for now. Let me tell you about the Luo River God Nation." Ji Tianxing nodded. "All right." Yun Yaro calmly explained, "The Luo Shui Divine Kingdom is located to the east of Shunwu continent, and the easternmost part of the continent is the Endless Sky Sea. It was said that on the other side of the Heavenly Sea was another continent. However, the Heavenly Sea was sealed by a deity, so it could not be crossed. The Luo Shui Divine Kingdom's national strength is comparable to the Boundless Divine Kingdom, and it might even be slightly stronger. There are a total of 7 empires, and each empire has billions of cultivators and commoners. It has been peaceful for thousands of years. In the middle of the 7 empires, there is a sacred land of martial arts known as Luo Shui Mountain. This is a training ground established by the Luo Shui Divine Lord. Currently, there are only 10 god disciples left on Luo Shui Mountain. Including you, there are 11 of them. Granny Long is highly regarded by the Luo Shui Divine Lord, and she leads Luo Shui Mountain. She also has 3 protectors and 7 divine envoys under her." Ji Tianxing listened quietly and quickly understood the situation at Luo Shui Mountain. From his point of view, Luo Shui Mountain's situation was very similar to God Sealing Mountain's, and the relationships between the people were much simpler. This was beneficial for the god disciples to focus on their cultivation without having to waste time and effort to scheme against each other. An hour later, Yun Yaro finished explaining the situation at Luo Shui Mountain in detail. The two chatted about other things, and Yun Yaro asked Ji Tianxing about his experiences and encounters over the past year. Ji Tianxing talked about the situation in Tianqian continent, as well as the destruction of the fiend race and the escape of the fiend emperor. Naturally, he mentioned the ghost race in Dark North Mountain, the 36 demon monarchs, the blood god, and so on. After a night, Ji Tianxing told Yun Yaro about his experiences over the past year in detail. Only then did Yun Yaro know how much pain and danger he had experienced, and how much pressure he had endured. This also made her cherish the present reunion even more. For the next 20 days, the flying ship sped through the sky. They passed through more than half of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation, crossing hundreds of millions of miles of territory. During this period, Ji Tianxing and the other god's disciples were meditating and cultivating in their own rooms. 25 days later, the flying ship finally returned to Luoshui Mountain. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already refined the azure with divine power given to him by Old Man Godly Ruins after more than 20 days of cultivation. His body and essence soul had reached their peak state. His strength had also more than doubled, reaching the peak of the 8th level essence soul realm. Early in the morning, the sun had just risen. The ice blue flying ship came to the peak of a 10,000-meter tall mountain and stopped. Granny Long transmitted her voice to the 6 god disciples. "Everyone, we have returned to Luoshui Mountain." When everyone heard her voice, they ended their cultivation and rushed to the spacious hall to gather. When Granny Long saw that everyone had arrived, she cast a spell and put away the ice blue flying ship. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the flying ship disappeared. Everyone's figures appeared in the sky, standing directly above the 10,000-meter tall mountain. They saw that the sky above their heads was a clear blue, without any impurities. The sky around them was filled with white clouds and mist that flowed slowly like a stream. Below their feet was a 10,000-meter tall, ice blue mountain. Even though the mountain was shrouded in clouds and the appearance of the mountain could not be seen clearly, it still exuded a sacred and majestic aura. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with a radius of 50 miles. On this flat land, there were more than 30 magnificent, simple, and elegant palaces, as well as more than a dozen residences. The extremely dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth formed 5-colored auspicious clouds that covered the palaces. Squads of guards in ice blue armor were patrolling the palaces and mansions. This was the martial arts sacred ground of the Luoshui divine nation, Luoshui Mountain. Ji Tianxing looked down at Luoshui Mountain and felt that it was filled with a peaceful and warm aura. He believed that the atmosphere here was better than Mount God and was more suitable for cultivation. "Let's go." Granny Long called out and led everyone through the defensive array and landed on Luoshui Mountain. Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaoming, Zhu Bin, and the others said goodbye to everyone and returned to their own residences. In the end, only Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yaro were left. Granny Long looked at Yun Yaro and said with a smile, "Yun Yaro, Ji Tianxing has come to Luoshui Mountain. With his status and talent, I should arrange a palace for him. However, he is your husband and I would like to hear your opinion about his residence." Yun Yaro did not hesitate or feel embarrassed. She said naturally, "Tianxing is my husband. How can I let him live elsewhere? It is not good for others to serve him." Chapter 1689. As for Ji Tianxing's residence, it was decided just like that. After Granny Long bade farewell, she rushed back to her residence to report to God Lord Luoshui about Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro passed through several wide paths and walked towards the Cloud Water Palace in the depths of the palace complex. The two strolled leisurely, admiring the scenery of Luoshan Mountain as they walked. Yun Yaro introduced the various palaces to Ji Tianxing, helping him familiarize himself with the situation of Luoshan Mountain. After all, he was going to stay here for a long time, so he had to familiarize himself with the environment. An hour later, the two returned to Cloud Water Palace. This palace was located deep in the mountain peak, and there were many palaces and courtyards around it. Cloud Water Palace was 1,000 feet wide, with 3 floors and dozens of rooms. There were also 2 gardens, one at the front and one at the back. The resplendent palace was filled with golden beams and painted rafters. It was very luxurious and dignified. Ji Tianxing asked Yun Yaro and learned that Luoshan Mountain had arranged dozens of guards and maids for Cloud Water Palace. Those guards were all elite soldiers, and the maids were all young and smart, obedient and sensible people. Fortunately, Yun Yaro did her best to stop Granny Long, leaving only the maids and guards. Otherwise, Granny Long would have arranged more than 100 guards and maids for her. In addition, Ji Tianxing discovered that Cloud Water Palace was protected by powerful divine arrays. There were also 4 sage-level arrays used to absorb heaven and earth spirit chi to aid cultivation. The heaven and earth spirit chi in Cloud Water Palace was 8 times denser than in other palaces. It was very beneficial to martial artists' cultivation. Ji Tianxing asked Yun Yarrow and learned that Cloudwater Palace used to be martial god Luoshui's residence. However, martial god Luoshui resided in Outer Heaven Divine Palace and would not come to Luotian Mountain. Martial god Luoshui was not married, and she did not have a divine son or divine daughter. Usually, she would send a message to Granny Long or send a divine official if there were any decrees or matters. Only when a divine official came to Luotian Mountain would she temporarily stay in Cloudwater Palace. All the signs indicated that Yun Yarrow enjoyed the best treatment and the best cultivation resources in the Luotian Mountain. Ji Tianxing was not surprised at all, and he understood the real reason. After all, Yarrow has inherited Goddess Yaoguang's legacy and is the person the Luoshui martial god values the most. No matter how generous Yarrow's treatment is, it's not excessive. Yun Yarrow led Ji Tianxing around the Cloudwater Palace before returning to their residence on the second floor. The two of them had just reached the entrance of the living room when they saw a draconian man in golden armor. This person was tall and mighty. He had the body of a human, but he had a dragon head and a dragon tail. His skin was covered with dragon scales. Ji Tianxing immediately recognized that this golden-armored dragon man was the guard protecting Yun Yarrow. His name was Jin Long. Jin Long bowed respectfully when he saw the two of them return. Jin Long greets Master and young Master Ji. Yun Yarrow was afraid that Ji Tianxing would not recognize him, so she introduced him. Tianxing, this is Jin Long. He protects me with Black Eagle and is absolutely loyal to me. Ji Tianxing nodded at Jin Long and revealed a kind smile. Jin Long had always been taciturn and was not good with words. He did not know how to respond to Ji Tianxing and could only squeeze out a smile. However, he had a dragon head and his smile was rather strange, even a little sinister. Ji Tianxing did not say anything else and followed Yun Yarrow into the living room. A 2-meter-tall enchanting woman in a black leather coat stood in the bright and luxurious living room. She had a hot figure and her long black hair was tied into a braid. There was a pair of black wings on her back. Her eyebrows and lips were dark purple in color. Her 10 fingers also had sharp and narrow fingernails that were like blades. When she saw that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had returned, she hurriedly came forward and bowed with a smile. Black Eagle greets Master. You're finally back. Master, this young master beside you should be young Master Ji, right? Yun Yarrow nodded and introduced the two of them calmly. Ji Tianxing nodded at Black Eagle and greeted him. Black Eagle stared at him excitedly. After sizing him up for a while, he bowed and said, Black Eagle greets young Master Ji. Master has been thinking about you day and night and has not been able to eat or sleep well. I didn't expect that Master would be reunited with young Master Ji after a trip to the ruins of God. Congratulations. Yun Yarrow revealed a smile and gave a simple explanation. Then, she led Ji Tianxing through the living room and into the bedroom. The spacious bedroom was decorated with simple decorations and furnishings, but it exuded an elegant aura. There was a faint fragrance in the air that made Ji Tianxing yearn for it. It was Yun Yarrow's unique body fragrance. Tianxing, you'll live here from now on. There are 2 secret rooms in the 2 corners of the room. It's perfect for us to cultivate in seclusion. Yun Yarrow stood in the room and pointed at the bookshelves in the 2 corners as she spoke to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing reached out and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. He pulled her into his embrace and whispered into her ear in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Yarrow, do you really want to live in the same room as me? Aren't you afraid that I'll eat you? Yun Yarrow's cheeks flushed red. She leaned on his shoulder and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz, I'm your wife. Whether you eat me or not, you can eat me whenever you want. Moreover, we should have consummated our marriage 2 years ago when we got married. It's just that there were so many twists and turns that we delayed it until now. Hubby, it's been hard on you. Hearing her shy and timid words, Ji Tianxing's heart was tickled. He revealed a mischievous smile and said, Aya, I've been on the road for more than 20 days. I'm physically and mentally exhausted now. Yarrow, I'm a little tired. Why don't we go to bed and rest now? Yun Yarrow's pretty face turned even redder. Her cheeks burned, and her clear eyes were so gentle that they almost dripped with water. She leaned on Ji Tianxing's shoulder and asked in a weak voice, Tianxing, it's still daytime. We just came back. Wouldn't it be inappropriate to do it now? Ji Tianxing immediately smiled mischievously and said, Hubby, I'm just saying. Consummating our marriage is such an important and sacred thing. Of course, we have to wait until night to avoid being disturbed. I still have some things to deal with, so I'll go out first. Yun Yarrow finally understood that he was deliberately teasing her. She couldn't help but glare at him reproachfully. You go ahead. I just came back. I also have some things to deal with. Then, the two of them left the room one after the other. Yun Yarrow took Black Shadow and left the Cloud Water Palace to deal with some private matters. Ji Tianxing entered the secret room, opened the Sword World, and summoned Ji Bai and Shohei. Before this, Ji Bai and Shohei had been healing and cultivating in the Sword World. After such a long time of recuperation, Ji Bai's injuries had long since healed, and his essence, energy, and spirit had recovered to their peak. The two of them appeared in the dark secret room and cupped their hands to Ji Tianxing. Master, why did you summon us? Chapter 1690. Ji Bai and Shohei clearly did not understand the situation. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to briefly explain what had happened before. After the two of them heard this, they were stunned. Master, you actually gave up on the vast divine nation and joined the Luoshui divine nation? Master, you actually have a wife. Your wife is the #1 god disciple of the Luoshui divine nation? Ji Bai's reaction could still be considered calm. He was originally rather cold. Shohei became even more excited. He looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief and exclaimed with a complicated tone, I really can't believe that you and Madam are both peerless geniuses. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and explained, when I joined Mount God Bestowment, it was not to become a god's disciple, but to find the whereabouts of my wife. Now that I've reunited with her, of course I'll stay by her side and never leave her. Moreover, the Luoshui martial god had a close relationship with the Kenshin and had even received favors from the Kenshin. If the Luoshui martial god knows that I'm here, he'll definitely take care of me. Ji Bai calmly nodded his head and said, that's right. Furthermore, the Luoshui divine country is closer to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. For us, it's more convenient. When Ji Bai mentioned the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianxing recalled the map of the Shunwu continent. The three divine kingdoms were located in the west, center, and east of the continent. The northernmost part of the Heaven End God Nation was the North Underworld Mountain where the ghost race was entrenched. It was extremely dangerous. In the north of the Luoshui God Nation, there was an unclaimed region of 1 billion miles, and it was ruled by the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. That's right, Ji Bai, Shohei, since you followed me to the Luo River God Nation, you should report back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. For the next period of time, I might stay in the Luotian mountain and be safe. If you have something to do and need to leave, just do it. You don't have to protect me anymore. Ji Bai and Shohei looked at each other, then cupped their hands and bowed to Ji Tianxing. Thank you, Master, for your help. We do have something to do and need to return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, it's fine. Go ahead. Shohei added and explained, Master, don't worry. We will deal with the matter as soon as possible and rush back to protect you. According to my estimation, he will be back in 3 months at most. Yes, no problem. Ji Tianxing nodded his head again as he warned, there's no time to lose. I'll send you all out of the Luotian mountain now. It's a long journey back to Tianzhu mountain from here, so you have to pay attention to your safety. After that, Ji Tianxing personally sent Ji Bai and Shohei off. After the two of them left Luotian mountain, Ji Tianxing returned to Cloud Water Palace. He had nothing to do, so he meditated in his bedroom and waited for Yun Yarrow to come back. Soon, half a day had passed. By the time Yun Yarrow finished her work and returned to her room, it was already night time. Husband, sorry to keep you waiting. Yun Yarrow looked at Ji Tianxing with an apologetic expression. Ji Tianxing sat on the spacious spiritual jade bed and looked at her with a smile. He patted the quilt next to him and said, Yarrow, you must be tired after a busy day, right? Come and rest. Yun Yarrow revealed a shy expression. She lowered her head and said in a low voice, Husband, don't be impatient. I'll go to the hot spring to bathe and clean my body first, then I'll come and serve you. Ji Tianxing had long known that she had the habit of soaking in hot springs, so he said with a mischievous smile, "Oh? Yao Yao, is there a hot spring in your bedroom too? Why don't I accompany you and wash your body and mind before resting? It'll be more solemn and holy." As he spoke, he got up and got out of bed without waiting for Yun Yao's reply. He walked in front of Yun Yao, stretched out his arms, and carried Yun Yao in his arms. He then walked towards the back of the bedroom. Yun Yao struggled a few times, but she couldn't break free from his embrace, so she could only let him hold her. There was a secret door at the back of the bedroom. After it was opened, it was connected to a secret room with a radius of 5 feet. This secret room was the hot spring, and the surrounding walls were embedded with moonstones. There were many rare gems scattered in the hot spring pool. The warm water in the pool was emitting steam in spirals, and the hundreds of gems at the bottom of the pool were emitting colorful brilliance, releasing invisible spiritual energy and power. Ji Tianxing carried Yun Yao to the side of the pool and gently helped her take off her white dress bit by bit. Yun Yao lowered her head in embarrassment. Her cheeks were flushed, and her pair of sparkling earlobes had also turned pink. After a while, the two of them took off their clothes and stepped into the hot spring together. Ji Tianxing didn't tease Yun Yao anymore. He sat side by side with her in the pool, silently thinking about something. A few years ago, when the two of them were still in the Sky Pillar sect, they had also soaked in the hot spring together. However, at that time, the two of them hadn't confirmed their relationship, nor were they married. What happened that night was also a beautiful misunderstanding. Now, the two of them were in the same hot spring, and their identities were different. The two of them were officially husband and wife. There was no need to hide anymore, let alone hide. Ji Tianxing looked at Yun Yao gently, enjoying the perfect and graceful scenery. This was the first time the two of them were naked to each other. Ji Tianxing feasted his eyes, and he was quite amazed in his heart. Yun Yao's beauty was truly the product of the heavens and earth. She was as beautiful as the sun and moon. From head to toe, every part of her body was perfect. She was so beautiful that it shook one's soul, causing one to be captivated by it. She was simply a masterpiece of the Creator. 15 minutes later, the two of them had washed their bodies and minds, and their emotions were soothed and calmed down. Previously, Yun Yao had been lowering her head and hugging her arms, blocking the most impressive scenery. Now that her emotions had calmed down, she no longer hid anything from Ji Tianxing. She allowed him to pull her into his arms and snuggle up to him intimately. Ji Tianxing's eyes became more and more passionate, and his body temperature kept rising. Yun Yao's cheeks were already red, and her eyes were a little misty. Thus, Ji Tianxing carried her out of the hot spring. After circulating his energy to evaporate the water droplets all over their bodies, the two of them lay on the warm and pleasant jade bed. Ji Tianxing carried Yun Yao with one hand and pulled up the quilt with the other. Then, he began a wonderful exploration under the quilt. Yun Yao couldn't restrain her shyness, so she waved her hand and sent out a spiritual light to extinguish all the gemstone lights in the room. When the room fell into darkness and silence, she began to respond to Ji Tianxing's exploration. Not long after, Yun Yao let out a slightly painful groan, and the two of them no longer had any gap between them, and they entered a wonderful and tender land together. The dimly lit room was filled with a warm and romantic atmosphere. Good times were always short. Ji Tianxing had been tormenting her for the whole night, but he was still a little unsatisfied. He had played with every beautiful scenery to his heart's content. It wasn't until dawn when Yun Yao was a little tired that he stopped his invasion and fell asleep quietly with her in his arms. Yun Yao nestled in his arms meekly and stared at him quietly. She felt his breathing and aura, and her emotions were complicated. Tianxing, from today onwards, we really belong to each other. You and I are a real husband and wife. We breathe together, share a destiny, and there is no barrier between us. In this life, no one and nothing can separate us. Chapter 1691. For the next few days, the Luotian mountain was very peaceful. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stayed in the Cloud Water Palace, and no one came to disturb them. Every day during the day, the two of them would look at the scenery on the Luotian mountain, watch the sunrise and sunset, and talk about the past. At night, the two of them would sleep in the same room and immerse themselves in infinite tenderness and love, enjoying the wonderful moment. This kind of peaceful life was what Ji Tianxing yearned for the most. Most importantly, he could accompany Yun Yarrow day and night, and it was very happy and sweet. It was no exaggeration to say that in his short 20-odd years of life, these few days were the happiest days for him. On the morning of the 5th day, in the Cloud Dragon Palace deep in the Luotian Mountain, in an exquisite and elegant secret room, Grandma Long was standing respectfully and staring at a diamond-shaped gem on the stone table in front of her. The gem lit up with white light and condensed into a light screen the size of a table. A graceful blue figure appeared in the silver-white light screen. It was a young woman in an ice blue dress, and she had a noble, elegant, and holy temperament. From her face, she seemed to be in her 20s. But on her pitilessly beautiful face was a pair of clear and deep eyes that were like a sea of stars, and they contained wisdom and experience that could see through everything. Her temperament was cold and holy, and she was as graceful as a swimming dragon. She was like a cloud that covered the moon, and she was like snow that drifted in the wind. She frowned and looked at Grandma Long with sparkling eyes. She asked gently, "The number one God's disciple of the vast divine nation is Yun Yarrow's husband? In order to be with Yun Yarrow, he is willing to join the Luotian Mountain?" Granny Long nodded with a smile and said respectfully, reporting to the Divine Lord, "That is indeed the case. I have interacted with Ji Tianxing a few times, and I can be sure that this is not a conspiracy." Ji Tianxing said that he joined the God-sealing mountain to find his wife, Yun Yarrow. The blue-robed woman listened to her explanation, and her brows slowly relaxed. Then, she said with a gratified look on her face, "That's good. This is an unexpected surprise and harvest." That guy named Ji Tianxing was the number one disciple of God in the Three Kingdoms. He was indeed a rare genius to be able to shine in the conference. Since he is willing to join the Luotian Mountain, we will naturally not reject him. Granny Long, you have to make proper arrangements for him. Let him cultivate in peace on the Luotian Mountain and provide him with as many cultivation resources as possible. If he and Yun Yarrow can grow up quickly, they will definitely be of great help to me in the future. Maybe they can help me solve that crisis. Granny Long cupped her hands again and reported with a smile, "Don't worry, Divine Lord. This old one has made the necessary arrangements. Ji Tianxing is currently living with Yun Yarrow in Cloud Water Palace, enjoying the best cultivation environment and treatment." Before she could finish speaking, the woman in the blue dress was startled. Her expression abruptly changed, and her pair of embroidered eyebrows furrowed together. "What? Granny Long, you actually let them live together?" Granny Long was also startled. Then, she explained with a face full of doubts, "Divine Lord, I didn't take the initiative to arrange this. Yun Yarrow requested this from me. However, they are husband and wife. Their love is stronger than gold. There is nothing wrong with them living together, right?" The woman in the blue dress expression became even worse. She said with a worried look, "If that's the case, aren't they already in the same room?" Granny Long suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She smiled bitterly and said, "Divine Lord, how can I ask about such a private matter? Moreover, they are husband and wife. It is natural for them to sleep together." "Silly." The woman in the blue dress was a little angry. She said with a worried look, "Granny Long, there is something that I didn't tell you. I didn't expect you to make such a big mistake. Yun Yarrow is different from other disciples of God. She was born extraordinary. In the future, she swore to become a divine spirit that is on par with me. No, she is even stronger than me. It is because of this that I treated her as my own daughter. I gave her the title of the first disciple of God and gave her the title of goddess. However, she is still in the process of awakening and budding. Her 7 souls are not complete yet. Her lifespan is also very short. She must maintain a pure and flawless body to stabilize her life and divine soul. Before her 7 souls are gathered, she must not sleep with a man. Otherwise, there will be a big problem." Granny Long was dumbfounded when she heard this series of secrets. She was stunned and stood there with her mouth open. After a long time, she came back to her senses. She quickly bowed and apologized to the woman in the blue dress. Divine Lord, I was foolish to make such a big mistake and hurt Yunyaro. Please punish me, Divine Lord. Granny Long was really panicking. Her expression and eyes were full of worry and regret. She knew how important Yunyaro was to the Divine Lord. She also knew how angry and worried the Divine Lord was at this moment. The woman in the blue dress took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. She waved her hand and said, "Those who don't know are not guilty. It is I who concealed this information. I don't blame you." According to Yunyaro, she and Ji Tianxing got married 2 years ago. However, before that, she had always been a pure virgin. She did not consummate her marriage with Ji Tianxing. Therefore, the situation may not be as bad as we think. Maybe they were busy cultivating and did not consummate their marriage. After all, martial artists who have reached this level of strength don't have much interest in matters of love. Granny Long was relieved. She nodded and said, "I hope so. However, just in case, I still have to separate them. Don't worry, Divine Lord. I will go and find Ji Tianxing now and arrange a place for him alone." The woman in the blue dress shook her head and said seriously, "This is not appropriate. They are a legitimate couple. What reason do you have to separate them? You can only use Yunyaro as an excuse to take her away temporarily and separate her from Ji Tianxing for half a month with the excuse of imparting a secret technique to her. In addition, I will send a heavenly official to the Luotian mountain to accompany Yunyaro and check on Yunyaro's condition. Heavenly official Luo Li has a good relationship with Yunyaro. They are like sisters. It is more suitable for her to handle this matter than you." Granny Long nodded and bowed respectfully. "I understand. Don't worry, Divine Lord." The woman in the blue dress nodded and sighed worriedly. "Yunyao, oh Yunyao. I have spent decades of effort to get you to where you are today. Don't lose the big picture because of a small matter and ruin my final plan." Granny Long looked at the screen quietly. She frowned and thought about the Divine Lord's words. However, she was confused. She did not know what kind of shocking plan the Divine Lord had. She only knew that Yunyaro was extremely important to the Divine Lord. She could not lose her. After a while, the woman in the blue dress turned and left, disappearing from the screen. The white screen dissipated and the gem returned to normal. Chapter 1692. The sun was only high in the sky, and the sun was shining brightly. The entire peak of Luotian Mountain was immersed in peace and harmony. In Yunyaro's room in the Cloudwater Palace, Ji Tianxing was still hugging Yunyaro as he rested on the bed and chatted with her with his eyes closed. Yunyaro's long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, and a hint of tiredness appeared on her beautiful face. Seeing Ji Tianxing enjoying himself, she asked, "Husband, it's already high in the sky. Aren't we going to get up? If we continue to laze around in bed, Black Eagle and those maids will laugh behind our backs again. You've been indulging in pleasure for the past few days. I'm afraid your body won't be able to take it." Ji Tianxing looked at her with a smile and reached out to caress her cheek. He teased, "We've been through so many hardships, and we've almost lost our lives countless times. It wasn't easy to get today's peace and happiness. How can I not cherish it? Who asked my wife to be so perfect and as beautiful as a fairy? Not to mention 5 days, even 500 days won't be enough for me. As for my husband's body, it will never get tired. If it weren't for the fact that you're getting more and more tired these past few days, your husband would just want to stay in bed with you for half a month." Yunyaro's cheeks turned red from his indecent words, and her eyes were covered with a thick layer of shyness. "Mph, don't talk nonsense again." Shameless, as she spoke, she turned her back to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was about to coax her when Black Eagle's voice came from outside the room. "Master, Granny Long has something to discuss with you. She's waiting for you in the study." Suddenly hearing this news, Yunyaro hurriedly picked up the bellaband and dress at the bedside and began to put on her clothes. "Tianxing, we should get up. Granny Long came to see me. We can't let her wait too long. Otherwise, it'll be so embarrassing." Ji Tianxing stopped teasing her and began to get up and put on his clothes. After a while, Yunyaro got dressed and went to wash up. When she was done, She left the bedroom and went to the study to see Granny Long. Ji Tianxing got up slowly and washed up. After he was done, he made a cup of spirit tea and sat in the living room waiting for Yun Yarrow to come back. About a quarter of an hour later, he finished a cup of tea and Yun Yarrow returned to the living room. Tianxing, I have something to tell you. Yun Yarrow walked up to Ji Tianxing and said. Ji Tianxing looked at her hesitant expression and raised his eyebrows. Yarrow, what's the matter? Yun Yarrow hesitated for a moment before explaining, Grandma Long came to find me because she wanted to teach me a secret technique. If I want to master this secret technique, I have to go to the ice spirit cave in the back mountain with her and cultivate in seclusion for at least half a month. Ji Tianxing nodded his head without hesitation. Yarrow, if you want to learn that secret technique, you can go with Grandma Long, but if I leave, no one will be with you. Yun Yarrow looked at him apologetically. Ji Tianxing immediately waved his hand with a smile. Don't worry about me. We've been apart for a year and I've already persevered. Why would I care about half a month? After you go into seclusion, I'll also go into seclusion for half a month. Isn't that enough? Only then did Yun Yarrow reveal a faint smile. She nodded and said, Thank you, husband. I'll go now. Ian, go ahead. Ji Tianxing nodded with a smile and personally escorted her out of the Cloudwater Palace. After Yun Yarrow left, he also entered the secret chamber and began to busy himself. The heaven and earth spirit qi was extremely dense in the secret chamber. In the corner of the secret chamber, there was a large cloud of 5-colored spirit qi floating in the air. 5-colored spirit qi constantly dripped down, forming a pool of spirit qi in the corner. There were countless secret compartments on the surrounding walls that stored vast amounts of spirit qi, and other resources. In the middle of the secret chamber, there was a spirit jade throne with a 7-leaf white lotus that could assist in cultivation. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the throne, holding a spirit jade glaze bottle with both hands. He was absorbed in it. Inside the spirit jade glaze bottle, there was a weak divine soul floating quietly. Ji Tianxing stared at the divine soul for a long time, but he didn't find any signs of the divine soul growing or awakening. Sigh. It seems that the divine soul left by the white dragon god is too weak. It can't recover on its own. I can only find a way to help it recover its strength and awaken it as soon as possible. After muttering a few words, he used his spiritual perception to ask, Burial of Heaven, is there any way to help the white dragon god's divine soul recover as soon as possible? Burial of Heaven had already been awakened by him. It said in a low voice, There is a way. Just like what I did back then, I have to constantly absorb heaven and earth spirit qi or dharmic powers to slowly recover. Especially some rare treasures, spirit herbs, and so on, the effects are more obvious. Upon hearing its words, Ji Tianxing had an idea. He hurriedly rummaged through his interspatial ring. Moments later, he took out a spirit fruit that was as red as fire from his interspatial ring. He held it in his palm and examined it. This spirit fruit was only the size of a thumb. It was glowing with a red light and contained an astonishing amount of spirit qi and power. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Previously in the ruins of God, Old Man of God gave me this vermilion fruit, but I didn't have the time to refine it. If I can refine this vermilion fruit, I can immediately break through to the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm and even reach the half-step Tribulation Transcendence realm. However, with my own cultivation, I can also break through very quickly. This vermilion fruit is too convenient for White Dragon. Before he could finish speaking, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. Are you sure you want to use this vermilion fruit to help Little White recover her spirit power? Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment before he asked, Why not? This vermilion fruit is a top spirit treasure. Even martial sages would fight for it. Wouldn't its effects be even more powerful? Silly. Burial of Heaven said unhappily, If you use this vermilion fruit, you can indeed help Little White recover some of her spirit power. However, this is too extravagant and wasteful. The greatest effect of the vermilion fruit is to increase one's cultivation, stabilize one's soul, and raise one's spirit aptitude. Isn't your wife's soul missing? You can make the best use of this vermilion fruit if you let her consume it. Ji Tianxing finally understood the reason and hurriedly kept the vermilion fruit. In that case, I'll definitely leave it for Yarrow Yarrow. With that said, he looked at the glass bottle in his hand and smiled apologetically. White Dragon, it's not that I can't bear to part with it, but the vermilion fruit is really not suitable for you. However, don't worry, I'll do my best to help you recover your spirit power. With that said, he took out a huge amount of spirit stones, gems, elixir materials, and so on and stuffed them all into the glass bottle. He cast a spell to activate the array formation in the glass bottle and gradually refined the spirit stones, elixirs, and materials, transforming them into pure spirit chi of heaven and earth to nourish White Dragon's remnant soul. After doing all this, he put away the glass bottle and began to cultivate in peace. The azure wood divine power that Old Man of God had given him was still hidden in his body and had not been completely refined. Chapter 1693. For half a month, Ji Tianxing cultivated in seclusion in a secret chamber. Yun Yarrow followed Granny Long to cultivate her secret techniques in the ice spirit cave behind the mountain. During this period, Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zhu Bin visited Cloudwater Palace. They either sought out Yun Yarrow or sought out Ji Tianxing to resolve their doubts. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were cultivating in seclusion. The trio could only return empty-handed. On the morning of the 16th day, Ji Tianxing ended his seclusion and left the secret chamber. Last night, he had completely refined the azure wood divine power and naturally broke through the bottleneck to reach the 9th level of the essence soul realm. Now that he was out of seclusion, his essence, chi, and spirit were at their peak. His strength was more than twice as strong as before. After leaving the secret chamber, he went to the living room. When he saw Black Eagle standing guard in the living room, he asked, "Black Eagle, has Yarrow Yarrow returned?" Black Eagle bowed to him and answered truthfully, "Young Master Ji, Master went to the Ice Spirit Cave with Granny Long and has yet to return. If Master wants to cultivate the secret technique, I'm afraid it'll take some time. Please wait patiently." "Okay." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, "I'm not in a hurry. She will naturally return after she finishes her cultivation. By the way, has anyone come to look for Yun Yarrow and me in the past half a month?" Black Eagle cupped his hands and reported, "Young Master Ji, Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zhu Bin have all come. Yi Qingluo came to look for Master. Lu Xiaoming and Zhu Bin wanted to seek your guidance on some cultivation problems." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Okay, got it. The next time they come to look for me, please inform me." With that said, he left the living room and returned to his bedroom to meditate. Having just broken through to the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm, he still needed to cultivate for a few days to stabilize his realm and solidify his martial foundation. Soon, a day passed. The next morning, Ji Tianxing was still meditating when he was awakened by the sound of footsteps outside his room. As soon as he got up and walked out of the bedroom, he saw Heiying supporting Yun Yarrow and walking quickly towards the door. Yun Yarrow's face was a little pale. She frowned in pain and staggered a little. She seemed to be suffering and tormenting. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly went up and asked with concern, "Yarrow Yarrow, what's wrong? What happened?" "Tianxing." Yun Yarrow looked up at him and comforted him in a weak voice, "Don't worry, I'm fine. Quickly enter the room to rest." Ji Tianxing hurriedly supported her and brought her into the room, allowing her to lie on the jade bed. After Yun Yarrow lay down, he looked at Heiying and asked with a frown, "Heiying, what's going on?" Heiying did not dare to hide anything and hurriedly answered, reporting to young Master Ji, "Granny Long just sent Master back. Master just returned to the palace and became like this. This subordinate also does not know what exactly is going on." Ji Tianxing frowned and looked at Yun Yarrow with concern. "Yarrow Yarrow, didn't Granny Long bring you to the Ice Spirit Cave to teach you? Did you get injured while practicing martial arts? Or did Granny Long do something to you?" Yun Yarrow shook her head gently. Her lips were pale and bloodless. She said in a weak voice, "Tianxing, it's not Granny Long's fault. It's my body that's in trouble. Let me see where you're injured." Ji Tianxing reached out and held her wrist. He sent a strand of his divine sense into her body to check on her condition. Soon, his divine sense wandered around Yun Yarrow's body and carefully checked it. To his surprise, Yun Yaro's body did not have any abnormalities. It was very normal. How could this be? Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion. He was unwilling to give up and checked again. Yun Yaro saw that he was worried and anxious. She comforted him gently. Tianxing, don't worry too much. I'm really fine. For the past half a month, I've been in seclusion with Granny Long in the Ice Spirit Cave. Every 2 or 3 days, my condition would act up. I just need to rest for half a day and I'll be able to recover on my own. Ji Tianxing looked at her with concern and asked, Yaro Yaro, where are you feeling unwell? I just checked on you. There's nothing wrong with your body. Could it be that there's something wrong with your primordial spirit? Yun Yaro pursed her lips. She neither nodded nor denied it. Ji Tianxing immediately guessed that there was something wrong with her soul. After all, her soul was incomplete. She was different from ordinary martial artists. She only had a few years left to live. He was about to cast a spell to check on Yun Yaro's primordial spirit. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from outside the door. It was followed by the Golden Dragon's voice. Master, young Master Ji, Granny Long and Lord Heavenly Official have come to visit. Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianxing turned his head to look outside the door and frowned in confusion. Lord Heavenly Official? Is she from the Kingdom of Gods? The female official by the Divine Master's side. Yun Yaro revealed a faint smile and nodded. Yes, Lord Heavenly Official's name is Luo Li. She's a very good friend of mine. We're like sisters. Tianxing, I can't get up to greet them. Please greet them for me. When she finished speaking, Granny Long and Lord Heavenly Official Luo Li had already crossed the door and entered the room. Lord Heavenly Official Luo Li walked in front. She was a young woman wearing an icicle dress and a blue crystal crown on her head. She was tall and slender, with a gentle and beautiful face. She had a fair oval face, and a pair of bright eyes like autumn water. Her temperament was elegant and refined. Her whole body was filled with a noble, elegant, and gentle aura. Granny Long followed behind her. Her wrinkled face was filled with worry and anxiety. When Luo Li entered the room, she stared at Yun Yaro, who was lying on the bed. She said with concern, Yaro Yaro, you're not feeling well. Lie down and rest. Yun Yaro turned to look at her. She supported her body with her hands and tried to sit up. Luo Li hurriedly walked over and pressed down on her shoulders, making her lie down again. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands towards Luo Li and Granny Long. He said, Greetings, Lord Heavenly Official. Greetings. Granny Long nodded slightly in greeting, while Luo Li stared at him with a complicated look in her eyes. Ji Tianxing could vaguely feel that Luo Li's impression of him was a little subtle. She seemed to hate and blame him. However, because Yun Yaro was present, she didn't show it. Luo Li was silent for a moment. She then nodded and said, You're Yaro Yaro's husband, young Master Ji Tianxing? That's right. Ji Tianxing replied. He then asked in a low voice, May I know why Lord Heavenly Official Luo is looking for Yaro Yaro? Luo Li looked at Yun Yaro and said in a serious tone, I'm here to see Yaro Yaro on the orders of the Lord Heavenly Official. The Lord Heavenly Official had already expected that Yaro Yaro would have a problem. I didn't expect that I would still be a step too late. Chapter 1694. Ji Tianxing was worried about Yun Yaro's health, so he didn't want to leave. However, he guessed that Luo Li might have something to say to Yun Yaro alone. Therefore, he nodded and left the room. After he left, only Yun Yaro, Luo Li, and Grandma Long were left in the room. Yun Yaro looked at Luo Li with a complicated expression and asked, Luo Li, how did the Divine Master know that there would be a problem with my body? A bitter smile appeared on Luo Li's face as she sighed. Yaro Yaro, you're the clearest about your body's condition. You were alone in the past, so there wouldn't be any problems. However, your husband is here, and the two of you are living together. The Divine Master knew that Ji Tianxing was here, so he had a bad premonition. Therefore, he sent me to see you. I didn't expect the Divine Master to be right. Hearing her words, Yun Yaro frowned and asked in disbelief, Luo Li, do you mean that my body's condition is related to Tianxing? Of course. Luo Li nodded and asked in a low voice, Yaro Yaro, there are no outsiders here. Let me ask you. Have you consummated your marriage with young Master Ji? This. Yun Yao's expression was a little unnatural, and she said in a strange tone, Tianxing is my husband. It's natural for me to consummate my marriage with him. Sigh. Luo Li sighed and revealed an expression that said, I knew it. Yaro, if your soul was normal, it wouldn't be a problem for you to consummate your marriage with young Master Ji. However, you should be clear about your soul's condition. Before your soul recovers, you can't consummate your marriage. You must maintain your virginity. Otherwise, you will end up like this. Hearing her words, Yun Yaro understood the reason for her body's problem. Granny Long's face was also full of worry, and she said earnestly, Yun Yaro, half a month ago, this old one reported to the God Lord about Ji Tianxing. At that time, the Divine Master was worried that there would be a problem, so he sent Divine Official Luo to check on the situation. I brought you to the Ice Spirit Cave to cultivate so that you can temporarily separate from Ji Tianxing, so as to avoid any more serious consequences. But I didn't expect that you would have already. Sigh. Although Luo Li and Grandma Long's hearts were heavy, Yun Yaro didn't have the slightest bit of regret. She calmly looked at the two of them and comforted them. Luo Li, Grandma Long, you don't have to worry about me. My body is fine. I'll be fine after resting for a while. Luo Li waved her hand and said in a serious tone, Yaro, don't jump to conclusions so quickly. I'll check your body first and make sure of the situation before we talk. With that, she took out a dark gold medicine box from her spatial ring. After opening the medicine box, she took out a green-skinned gourd, a bag of golden divine needles, and a palm-sized black turtle shell. Then, she formed a spell with both hands and shot out a ray of white light. It was like a thread that entered Yun Yaro's body. Then, she used the golden divine needles to open the green-skinned gourd and released a drop of 5-colored divine liquid. Luo Li was busy for 15 minutes before she finally found out about Yun Yao's condition. She slowly stopped and put away the medicine box. Then, she looked at Yun Yaro with a serious expression. Yaro, your situation is very dangerous. You have to be treated in time. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. When she finished speaking, the door was pushed open by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's thick eyebrows were tightly knitted. He stepped into the room with a worried expression and asked, Divine Official Luo, what's wrong with Yaro? Luo Li glanced at him and said in a low voice, Since you've heard it, I'll tell you the truth. Yun Yaro's innate soul is missing, so her lifespan is limited. Her body's condition is different from ordinary people. If she keeps her virginity, she'll be fine. Before she reaches the end of her lifespan, she can fuse with a new divine pearl and extend her lifespan. But now, the two of you are in the same room. The balance of her body is broken, and there's a problem with her soul. Now, her 3 spiritual souls and 2 physical souls have been separated. So, she often faints, and her soul is in great pain. Moreover, her soul will backfire, and it will constantly devour her magic power and primordial spirit. If we don't treat her in time, her power will quickly decline, and her primordial spirit will gradually disappear. Luo Li's expression and tone became more and more serious as she spoke. Ji Tianxing and Grandma Long also looked worried. Everyone was silent for a moment. The atmosphere in the room was heavy and depressing. Ji Tianxing looked at Luo Li expectantly and asked, Divine Official Luo, you're the Divine Master's female official. You're proficient in medicine. Do you have any way to treat Yun Yaro? Luo Li thought for a moment and said, The most important thing now is to find some top-notch elixirs that can stabilize the soul and nourish the primordial spirit. First, we have to stabilize Yun Yaro's soul and primordial spirit. Then, I have to go back to the God's kingdom and report Yun Yaro's situation to the Divine Master. With the Divine Master's permission, I can open the treasury and take out a dozen top-notch treasures to refine healing elixirs for Yun Yaro. However, this process is very long. It will take more than 20 days to go back and forth from here to the God's kingdom. It will take me 4 months or even half a year to refine a saint-grade elixir. However, with Yun Yaro's body condition, I'm afraid it won't last that long. Grandma Long was stunned when she heard this. Then, she quickly asked Luo Li, Divine Official Luo, There are a few top-notch treasures in the treasury of the Luotian mountain. I'll go get them now and help Yun Yarrow stabilize her soul. Luo Li raised her eyebrows and asked, which treasures? Grandma Long quickly replied, there's divine moongrass, withered heart golden orchid, pure sun transverse fruit. She named 6 or 7 heavenly materials and earthly treasures in one breath. However, after Luo Li heard this, she shook her head with a face full of regret. Grandma Long, these treasures all have different effects, but none of them can stabilize a soul's injury. What should we do? Grandma Long immediately frowned and said anxiously, where am I supposed to find these treasures in such a hurry? Just as everyone was filled with anxiety and was at their wits' end, Ji Tianxing took out a red spiritual fruit from his interspatial ring and handed it to Luo Li. Divine Official Luo, use this red fruit to stabilize Yarrow's soul's injury first. Luo Li's gaze fell on the red fruit. After looking at it carefully, a surprised expression appeared on her face. It really is a red fruit. Moreover, it's a top-notch red fruit. This is great. Not only can the divine red fruit increase one's cultivation and nourish the soul, but it can also increase the aptitude of the soul. This is the treasure that Yun Yarrow needs the most. Especially this top-notch red fruit. It needs to grow for 1,000 years before it matures. Its effect is 5 times stronger than an ordinary red fruit. Ji Tianxing, where did you get such a top-notch red fruit? Chapter 1695. Since Luo Li asked, Ji Tianxing didn't plan to hide it. This vermilion fruit was given to me by the old man before I left the ruins of God. Luo Li's eyes flashed as she looked at Ji Tianxing meaningfully. That's right. She had also heard of Ji Tianxing being chosen by the old man of the divine ruins. Although she didn't know the details, she knew what it meant for Ji Tianxing to be chosen by the old man. Luo Li took the vermilion fruit and said to Granny Long, Granny, please go to the treasury of the Luotian mountain and take out the purple heartgrass, golden leaf lotus, thunderfire pill, and glazed red sandalwood. I want to use these 4 supplementary herbs to help Yun Yarrow absorb the vermilion fruit's medicinal energy. Only then can the vermilion fruit's effects be maximized. When Granny Long heard this, she quickly nodded in agreement. She turned and left the room, rushing towards the treasury. Luo Li then said to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow, Yarrow, young Master Ji, although this vermilion fruit can protect Yarrow's safety in the short term, it's not a long-term solution. Young Master Ji, if you really want to protect Yarrow, you have to control yourself in the future. Before Yarrow's 7 spirits return, you can't sleep with her. That's harming her. Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, Divine Official Luo, you mean to say that if we want to solve Yarrow's problem, we have to help her gather her 7 spirits? Yes. Luo Li nodded and explained, normal people have 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. Their souls are stable and flawless, but Yarrow only has 3 spiritual souls and 2 physical souls. It's extremely unstable. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, if that's the case, then I'll do my best to find the other 5 Neptunian divine pearls as soon as possible and help Yarrow gather her 7 spirits. 5 Neptunian divine pearls? Luo Li frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing strangely. Young Master Ji, you probably have some misunderstanding about the divine pearls. You don't understand them well enough, right? Yarrow's first spirit was formed from the Neptunian divine pearl. But the second pearl she fused with wasn't called the Neptunian divine pearl, but star. The other 5 divine beads also had different names and contained different laws and powers, such as longevity, nirvana, heaven, and earth. Oh, so that's how it is. Ji Tianxing revealed a surprised expression as he looked at Luo Li. He knew Luo Shui Luo knew the divine pearls of the divine pearls. Since Luo knew, Luo Li knew it was Luo Li. Since martial god Luo Shui was willing to tell Luo Li such a secret, it could be seen how much martial god Luo Shui trusted and relied on her. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing tried to ask, Divine Official Luo, I'm new here, so I'm not familiar with the situation in the Luo River God Nation. Even if I wanted to find the other 5 divine pearls, I didn't know where to start. Do you know any information or clues? I'll be grateful if you can tell me. Luo Li frowned and thought for a while. Countless pieces of information flashed through her mind. After a long while, A thought suddenly flashed through her mind as she recalled a piece of information. Oh right, I remember now. There's an extremely strange place. It's called the 100-Flower Valley. It's said that divine light often flashes in the valley. It's fleeting and makes countless people guess. However, the 100-Flower Valley's terrain is dangerous and mysterious. In a year, the 100-Flower Valley is hidden and invisible most of the time. It's impossible to find. I've analyzed the various legends and phenomena of the 100-Flower Valley. There must be a divine item there. It might be related to the divine pearls. Young Master Ji, if you don't mind, you can try your luck there. After she finished, Ji Tianxing asked without any hesitation, Divine Official Luo, may I ask where the 100-Flower Valley is? Do you have a map or a route? Luo Li rummaged through her space ring for a while and found an old yellow map. She handed it to Ji Tianxing. I do have a map. It's not too difficult to find. It's in the Phantom Mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire. It'll take about half a month from Luotian Mountain to the Phantom Mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire. Before Luo Li could finish, Yun Yaro shook her head and said to Ji Tianxing, Tianxing, I forbid you to go. The Phantom Mountain range is one of the most dangerous places in the Divine Kingdom. Demons and monsters run rampant there. It's very dangerous and mysterious. Not to mention that we're only in the primordial soul realm. Even a Tribulation Realm powerhouse might lose his life if he rashly enters the Phantom Mountain range. Luo Li also showed an apologetic look to Ji Tianxing. She nodded and said, Young Master Ji, Yaro Yaro is right. In the past few thousand years, many warriors have entered the Phantom Mountain range. However, 8 or 9 out of 10 of them had either gone missing or lost their lives. Very few of them have come out alive, and very few of them have gained anything. Over time, the Phantom Mountain range's notoriety has spread far and wide. Fewer and fewer warriors have gone there to explore and adventure. Ji Tianxing listened quietly, but he still insisted on his opinion. He said in a firm tone, Yaro Yaro, no matter how dangerous the Phantom Mountain range is, I have to go there. As long as there's a glimmer of hope that I can help you find the divine pearl, I won't give up. Even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, I won't back down. Just like when I helped you find the Sun Moon Divine Pearl in the Sun Moon Furnace. The Sun Moon Furnace is the most dangerous place in the world. When have I ever been afraid of it? But I don't want you to risk your life. Yun Yaro frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing. Her eyes were full of worry. Ji Tianxing walked to her and held her weak hands. He said in a gentle but firm tone, Yaro Yaro, don't try to persuade me anymore. I've made up my mind. You just focus on healing your body and wait for my good news. Yun Yaro considered for a while. She looked at him and said in an unquestionable tone, Tianxing, if you insist on going, I won't stop you. But I want to go with you. We, husband and wife, will share blessings and hardships together. No matter what kind of difficulties we face, we will face them together. Ji Tianxing knew her well. He knew that she was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. Once she had made up her mind, she wouldn't change her mind easily. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and said, Okay, I promise you. Luo Li stood at the side and watched the scene quietly. Her eyes flashed with a strange light as she sighed in her heart. At this moment, she finally understood why Yun Yaro was so loyal to Ji Tianxing and treated him as her own life. If there was a handsome and talented young man who loved me so much and didn't hesitate to sacrifice everything to protect me, I'm afraid that I would fall into his hands and treat him as the closest person to me. I wouldn't hold anything back, right? This thought flashed in Luo Li's mind. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a gentle gaze. Unknowingly, her impression of Ji Tianxing had changed. Chapter 1696. Not long after, Granny Long returned with 4 types of elixirs and gave them to Luo Li. Luo Li took out a Saint-grade pill furnace and started to refine the elixirs on the spot. Under her control, the 4 types of elixirs fused with the vermilion fruit, catalyzing the effects of the vermilion fruit. 6 hours later, she refined a dark red pill and gave it to Yun Yaro to consume. After Yun Yaro consumed the pill, the elixir spread throughout her body, quickly healing her soul and stabilizing it. Luo Li personally used her boundless magic power to help Yun Yarrow heal her injuries. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long waited outside the room. Unknowingly, half a day passed. When night fell, Luo Li finished her cultivation and opened the door. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long hurriedly entered the room and saw Yun Yarrow lying on the bed, sleeping peacefully. Her breathing was stable, and her furrowed brows were relaxed. Obviously, she was no longer in pain. Ji Tianxing hurriedly asked Luo Li, "Divine Official Luo, how are Yarrow's injuries?" Luo Li revealed a gratified smile and nodded. "That vermilion fruit is very old, and its effects are very powerful. It has already helped Yarrow stabilize her soul and heal her injuries. At least for the next 4 months, Yarrow's injuries won't relapse, and she won't suffer any backlash. Don't worry." Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to her. He said in a sincere tone, "Thank you, Divine Official Luo, for saving my life." "I can't thank you enough." Luo Li gently shook her head and said in a gentle tone, "You don't have to thank me. Yun Yarrow and I are like sisters. Saving her is my duty. Moreover, if it wasn't for your vermilion fruit, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Yarrow is asleep now, so don't disturb her. She will wake up in about 2 days. I still have to rush back to the God Kingdom to report this matter to the Divine Master and prepare to refine elixirs for Yarrow. I won't accompany you." As she spoke, Luo Li put away the medicine box and pill cauldron and was about to leave. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long walked her out of the room. Arriving at the entrance of the Cloud Water Palace, Luo Li stopped in her tracks. With a solemn expression, she exhorted, "Oh right, young Master Ji, if possible, try not to let Yarrow go to the Mirage Mountain range. For the next few months, it's best to let her recuperate in the palace. Try your best not to engage in any fights, so as to avoid any accidents that might cause injuries." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I will try my best to persuade him. Goodbye." Luo Li didn't say anything more. She cupped her hands towards him and Granny Long before turning around and flying into the sky. After a short 10 breaths, her figure disappeared into the horizon. After sending Luo Li off, Granny Long said a few words to Ji Tianxing before taking her leave. Ji Tianxing returned to his residence alone. He stayed in the bedroom and guarded Yun Yarrow closely. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the morning of the 3rd day, the sun had just risen. A ray of warm sunlight shone into the room through the window. Ji Tianxing sat by the bed and meditated, constantly paying attention to Yun Yarrow's movements. At this moment, Yun Yarrow, who had slept for 2 days and 2 nights, finally woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and saw Ji Tianxing sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at her with tender eyes. "Yarrow, are you feeling better?" Yun Yarrow slowly sat up and sensed her body's condition. She nodded and said, "I've already recovered. Furthermore, my cultivation has increased tremendously. I've reached a bottleneck and will soon break through. Yes, this is the effect of the vermilion fruit." Ji Tianxing explained, "The effects of the supreme-grade vermilion fruit are the strongest. Not only can it help you stabilize your soul and heal your injuries, it can also increase your cultivation greatly. If you absorb all of the vermilion fruit's medicinal essence, you might not only break through to the 8th level of the primordial spirit realm, but you might even reach the 9th level." Yun Yarrow revealed a gratified expression and said gently, "Tianxing, thank you. There's no need for thanks between us." Ji Tianxing said with a playful smile, "I wanted to leave alone and go to the Phantom Mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire while you were asleep. But I know your nature. After you wake up, you will definitely blame me for making the decision without your permission." Yun Yarrow revealed a faint smile and rolled her eyes at him. At least you know your place and didn't make the decision without my permission. If you leave me and go to the Phantom Mountain range alone, I will definitely chase after you." Ji Tianxing took her hand and discussed business with her. "Yarrow, rest for another day. We will prepare and set off for the Phantom Mountain range tomorrow." Yun Yarrow thought for a moment and shook her head. "I'm fine now. My strength is at its peak. I can set off immediately. However, for safety reasons, we have to bring Jinlong and Black Eagle. With them protecting us, the chances of exploring the 100 Flowers Valley will be higher." "Okay, We'll do as you say. Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. Then, Yun Yarrow got up and walked out of the room to instruct Black Eagle and Jinlong. Ji Tianxing also made some preparations and woke up Qian Yu, who was cultivating. Back in the vast divine kingdom, Qian Yu had swallowed the Moon Fox clan's divine moonstone and had been in a deep sleep. It had been 3 months since the incident. Now that Qian Yu had woken up, it had been cultivating in seclusion to refine the divine power in the divine moonstone. Its strength had also increased by dozens of times. It had reached the 4th level of the Essence Soul realm. After Ji Tianxing explained the situation to it, it carried Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, Black Eagle, and Jinlong out of the Cloud Water Palace. After flying out of the Luotian mountain, Qian Yu flapped its wings and flew east at lightning speed. The mysterious Frost Empire was located in the east of the Luotian mountain. During the journey, Black Eagle and Golden Dragon guarded Yun Yarrow closely, vigilantly watching their surroundings. Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing sat side by side on Qian Yu's back as they discussed the Mirage Mountain Range. The Mirage Mountain Range was one of the infamous danger zones in the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Yun Yarrow had some understanding of the region, so she told Ji Tianxing everything she knew. For 15 days, Qian Yu traveled without stopping, not knowing what fatigue was. That evening, the group finally arrived at the Mirage Mountain Range. Qian Yu was flying above a vast grassland. 300 miles in front of it was an endless mountain range. Looking down from high in the sky, one could see huge mountain ranges that resembled gigantic dragons lying on the ground. Almost every mountain range was boundless, extending from north to south. The dark green mountain ranges were covered in lush primitive forests. It was difficult to see any exposed rocks or soil. Between the mountains was a dense forest. All of them were ancient trees that reached 1,000 feet tall. Occasionally, flocks of birds would appear between the mountain ranges. They were as fast as lightning, disappearing in a flash. The sky above the mountains was covered in a thick light blue fog, obscuring the depths of the mountain range. Ji Tianxing stared at the mountain range for a moment before his eyes turned grave. He could sense that the seemingly peaceful Mirage Mountain Range was hiding countless ferocious and savage demon beasts. Chapter 1697. After Qian Yu entered the Mirage Mountain Range, he flew straight ahead. According to Luo Li's description and the route on the map, Centauria Valley was located in the central region of the Mirage Mountain Range. With Qian Yu's speed, it would take him a day and a night to reach the vicinity of Centauria Valley. While flying above the mountain range, Qian Yu clearly slowed down and appeared very cautious. The Black Eagle and Golden Dragon no longer stayed on his back. They flew to the left and right respectively, vigilantly observing their surroundings. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow also drew their respective swords. They stood side by side on Qian Yu's back and looked at the mountains ahead. The first few hours were relatively peaceful and smooth. Even if there were powerful fey beasts or beast hordes in the mountain range, they were intimidated by Qian Yu's aura and did not dare to attack. However, as time passed, the group entered the depths of the Mirage Mountain Range and began to encounter danger. The first time they encountered danger was in the valley between 2 mountain ranges. In the deep valley, there were 2 giant flying apes lurking. They occupied the entire area. They had strength at the 5th Firmament Essence Soul realm and were extremely bloodthirsty and battle-hungry. They had rich combat experience. When they sensed the immense divine power in Qian Yu's body, they could not suppress their bloodthirst and launched a brazen attack. This time, there was no need for Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow to take action. The Black Eagle and Golden Dragon were the first to discover the danger. In just a few moves, they killed 3 giant flying apes. Ji Tianxing observed the duo's moves and mystic techniques and discovered that they had strength at the 8th Firmament Essence Soul realm. They had mastered powerful mystic techniques. They were more than enough to deal with warriors or fey beasts below the Tribulation Transcendence realm. After dealing with the giant flying apes, the group continued on their journey. About 2 hours later, Qian Yu flew over a 10,000-foot tall mountain. Danger approached once again. A flock of dark gold wind-concealing golden condors chased after them from behind and attacked them from all sides. There were 28 wind-concealing golden condors in this flock. Furthermore, They had strength at the second firmament essence soul realm and above. Every wind-concealing golden condor had a body 100 feet long. When their massive golden wings spread, they were 200 feet wide. They were extremely fast, like golden streams of light that shimmered in the dusky sky. Their attack power was extremely strong, and they knew how to surround each other and cover each other. Although the Black Eagle and the Golden Dragon were loyal to their master and fought desperately against the attack of the group of eagles. But with their strength, it was impossible for them to solve the problem quickly. Hence, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and Qian Yu all retaliated. Ji Tianxing used the star-shattering fist with his left hand, sending out a dazzling fist light. Each fist light was able to blast apart a wind-concealing golden eagle. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and slashed out a giant golden sword that was over 100 feet long, quickly killing those golden eagles. Under his fist and sword, none of the wind concealment golden eagles could withstand a single move. They were all killed instantly. Yun Yarrow was the same. She waved her heavenly ice divine sword and used a mysterious sword technique to kill the wind concealment golden condors one after another. The two of them calmly stood in the sky, attacking and defending each other. Their coordination was incomparable. No matter how the wind shelter golden eagle attacked, it could not pose a threat to the two of them. Instead, their Dharma spell attacks quickly killed the group of wind concealment golden eagles. The dazzling sword light and the dazzling Dharma spell light intertwined and converged into a colorful glow that covered a radius of dozens of miles. A series of muffled sounds reverberated in the sky like muffled thunder. The wind concealment golden eagles kept screaming and wailing. One after another, they died and were beheaded into pieces of flesh and blood that scattered among the mountains. Qian Yu's performance was also very heroic. Ji Tianxing was impressed. This was the first time it had killed an enemy after breaking through to the essence soul realm. Its power was very vast, as if it was endless. Its speed was also as fast as a stream of light. Every time it released a sky full of ice arrows and blue blades, it would always be able to kill a golden eagle. This battle only lasted for 100 breaths of time before it ended. The 28 wind concealment golden eagles were all killed. Not a single one escaped. After the battle ended, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to leave. He asked the Black Eagle and the Golden Dragon to help him pick up countless essence soul fragments from the devastated battlefield. Those were the essence soul fragments of the wind concealment golden eagles. If left alone, they would dissipate into the world in a few days. However, after Ji Tianxing obtained more than 200 essence soul fragments, he gave them to the burial of heaven. The burial of heaven could devour the essence soul fragments and absorb their power to slowly recover its vitality. After collecting the spoils of war, Ji Tianxing rode Qian Yu and continued to travel in the sky. However, in the battle just now, more than 20 wind concealment golden eagles were killed. Their corpses were turned into pieces of flesh and blood that scattered in the mountains. The commotion of the battle awakened the monsters in the surrounding hundreds of miles. The smell of blood that filled the air stimulated the ferocity of many monsters. As soon as Ji Tianxing and the others left, dozens of monsters swarmed from all directions and began to hunt them down. The monsters that could survive in the depths of the Phantom Mountains were basically at the spirit cultivation realm and above. They had lived for hundreds or thousands of years. The powerful monsters that ruled the territories were all at the essence soul realm. These demonic beasts usually fought with each other, or fought for territory, or snatched spirit veins, treasured lands, and resources. But now, they were united against a common enemy. They saw Ji Tianxing and the others as invaders and worked together to hunt them down. Qian Yu sped through the sky for thousands of miles. In the sky behind him, there was a mighty team. There were at least 200 demonic beasts that had joined in the chase. They were all filled with killing intent. Seeing this, Qian Yu was a little angry and said with murderous intent, "Old Ji, those lowly monsters are really reckless. Why don't we kill them all?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said indifferently, "It's easy to kill those monsters, but this is the Phantom Mountains. There are too many unknown dangers. If we fight with those monsters, we will definitely be besieged and fall into a difficult battle. By then, more monsters will be alerted and the battle will never stop. It's meaningless and a waste of time. Our main goal is to find the 100-Flower Valley as soon as possible. Chen Yu nodded slightly and said regretfully, "All right, those monsters are lucky. We'll spare their lives for now." Then, he sped up and flew through the sky, rushing to the 100-Flower Valley. Half an hour later, the mighty hunting team was shaken off by it. However, the deeper they went into the mountains, the more dangers they encountered. For the next half a day, they would be attacked by a group of monsters every few tens of thousands of miles. The continuous bloody battles made Chen Yu, Black Eagle, and Golden Dragon bloodthirsty. Their bodies were covered in blood and looked particularly ferocious. Most of it was the blood of monsters, but they were also heavily injured. By the next morning, they had already fought more than 20 battles and killed more than 600 demonic beasts. Everyone's magic power was depleted and they were exhausted. Chapter 1698. On a lush mountain peak. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow sat on a large rock, cleaning the blood and stains on their bodies. Both of them had consumed a lot of their dharmic powers, so they took pills to recover their dharmic powers. However, Ji Tianxing had gained a lot. He had obtained hundreds of demon beast essence soul fragments. He had given these essence soul fragments to the Burial of Heaven, which could help the Burial of Heaven recover a lot of its dharmic powers. In the forest not far away, the Golden Dragon and the Black Eagle were sitting under a towering ancient tree, leaning against the tree trunk. Both of them were stained with blood, their hair was messy, and there were at least a dozen wounds on their bodies. They looked quite miserable. Their dharmic powers were almost exhausted. The light in their eyes was dim, and their breathing was a little chaotic. Fighting more than 20 battles in a row had almost exhausted their mental and physical strength. Now, they urgently needed to rest. They needed to recuperate for at least a few days to recover. Further away, Chen Yu was sitting on a branch of a towering ancient tree, looking around. At this time, its body had shrunk countless times. It was only 3 feet long. The previous battle had also caused it some minor injuries, and it had consumed a lot of its energy. However, its recovery ability was very strong. Its injuries were quickly healed, and its energy was quickly replenished. Now that Ji Tianxing and the others were resting on the mountain peak, it was on guard for them. However, no one saw that there were 2 pairs of cold, bloodthirsty eyes secretly watching them from the depths of the forest. They were 200-meter-long, green snake-shaped demon beasts. On the surface, they looked like 2 huge pythons with strong and slender bodies, flat and wide heads, and bloody mouths. The green snakes' bodies were as rough as the bark of an old tree. The patterns on their bodies were messy, and they were covered with washbasin-sized scales. On their flat triangular heads, there was a protruding black horn, which glowed with a cold light. They had a special innate ability that allowed them to hide in the dense forest, and they were invisible. As they moved through the forest, they did not make any sound or aura. 2 pairs of cold, green eyes stared at the mountain peak, revealing a strong murderous intent. 5 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 5 kilometers. 2 green pythons were rapidly approaching the peak of the mountain, heading toward Ji Tianxing and the others. In a short span of 10 breaths, the 2 green pythons arrived at the peak of the mountain. They couldn't wait to launch an attack. Their main target was Chen Yu, who was sitting on the tree branch. The divine power fluctuations emanating from Chen Yu's body had a fatal attraction to them. The green python on the left raised its head, its black horn glowing with a dark light, releasing 3 sharp and narrow light blades. Each of the light blades was over 30 meters long, and they were so condensed that they seemed to be solid, like an indestructible giant spear. Swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, 3 giant black spears appeared in front of Chen Yu and enveloped its body. It immediately sensed the approaching danger. Its body instantly curled up into a ball and turned into an icy blue stream of light, flying to the side. However, no matter how fast its reaction was, it was still 1 step too slow. Peng peng peng. 2 of the 3 pitch-black giant spears missed their target and struck the towering ancient tree. One of the giant spears hit Chen Yu on the spot and sent it tumbling away, letting out a painful groan. It flew thousands of meters in the air before falling into the depths of the forest. Following the deafening explosion, a black shockwave exploded from the peak of the mountain and spread out in all directions. Dozens of towering ancient trees were blown to smithereens on the spot, turning into fine wood shavings. A few huge craters were formed on the ground, and sand and dust were splashed everywhere. The entire 1,000-foot-tall mountain shook violently from the impact of the terrifying power. The sudden change broke the tranquility of the mountain. Ji Tianxing immediately became alert and shouted with a vigilant look, "Demon beast attack, everyone be careful." Almost as soon as his voice rang out, the other green python opened its bloody mouth and released 2 dark green light pillars, one for the golden dragon and the other for the black eagle. The golden dragon and the black eagle had just sensed the danger and were about to launch a counterattack with their weapons. Peng peng. With 2 dull explosions, the 2 of them were hit by the dark green light pillars and were sent tumbling away. 2 more huge craters appeared in the forest on the peak of the mountain. The violent shockwave exploded and swept across a radius of more than 10 miles, blasting all the towering ancient trees on the peak of the mountain into pieces. At this moment, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had already flown into the sky with their swords in hand. Ji Tianxing's eyes and divine sense had also locked onto the 2 green pythons' auras and determined their location. "Damned animals!" He roared with a murderous aura and swung the sword of burial of heaven with all his strength, slashing out 7 dark golden sword auras toward the 2 pythons. 7 stars sword. The golden sword auras pierced through the sky, passing through the dust and debris in the sky and instantly hitting the 2 pythons. Peng peng, a few muffled sounds burst out, and the 2 green pythons were sent flying. However, the tough scales on their bodies blocked most of the sword auras and neutralized most of the power. After being knocked back 1,000 feet, they twisted their bodies and flew into the sky, charging toward Qian Yu as fast as lightning. Their goal was very clear. They wanted to kill Qian Yu and steal his divine power and bloodline. Qian Yu had just climbed up from the rubble when he saw the 2 pythons charging toward him. Therefore, his body flashed with icy blue light and immediately expanded to a length of 1,000 feet. The 12 furry icy blue tails also released an overwhelming amount of icy blue blades of light towards the 2 giant pythons. Peng 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 peng. With a series of dull explosions, the 2 sides engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing rushed to the nearby rubble and rescued the golden dragon and the black eagle. The golden dragon and the black eagle were already severely injured. After being attacked by the green pythons, their injuries worsened and they became even more miserable. The 2 of them endured their injuries and pain and still wanted to fight bravely. However, Ji Tianxing stopped them and put them into the sword world so that they could recuperate. After settling the golden dragon and the black eagle, Ji Tianxing held the burial of heaven sword and charged toward the 2 pythons with murderous intent. Yun Yarrow had already made her move. She waved her sword and stabbed at one of the pythons like a net of swords. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dozens of incomparably sharp cold lights pierced the 2 giant pythons one after another. However, the bodies of the 2 giant pythons trembled and emitted a dark green light, but they were not injured at all. With Yun Yarrow's strength, she could not pose a threat to the 2 pythons. Noticing this, Ji Tianxing frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. This was because he realized that the 2 pythons' strength had surpassed the essence soul realm. They had reached the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. They were no longer ordinary pythons. They were evil dragons that had undergone the baptism of the heavenly tribulation and had completed their evolution. Ji Tianxing had to be alert and fight with all his might. Chapter 1699. Following Ji Tianxing's roar, the giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long slashed down from the sky. An evil dragon was attacking Qian Yu fiercely, sending Qian Yu flying again. Before it could chase after Qian Yu, it was hit by the giant golden sword and smashed into the mountain peak from the sky. A huge crack suddenly appeared on the mountain peak that was full of scars, and dust splashed out into the air. A deep wound appeared on the evil dragon's body, and dark green venom and blood splattered out. In pain, it opened its bloody mouth and let out an angry roar. Yun Yarrow took the opportunity to use her ultimate skill and slashed out a crescent light blade that was hundreds of meters long. Crescent light sky attack. The silver-white sword light was like a crescent moon falling from the sky, striking the evil dragon with a loud bang. Bam! The evil dragon was hit hard again and smashed into the ruins. Its wound was even bigger. The other evil dragon quickly rushed over and helped its companion to block Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro's joint attack. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky. Numerous light blades collided fiercely, exploding with a loud, muffled sound that reverberated in the sky. Dazzling golden, blue, and green lights lit up the dark sky. Violent shockwaves swept across the entire mountain peak like a hurricane, blowing up dust and stone fragments. Chen Yu, who was severely injured, wandered around the edge of the battlefield, looking for an opportunity to launch a surprise attack. It attacked a few times, and the innate abilities and secret skills it released all hit the two evil dragons. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between it and the two evil dragons was too big, and it could not threaten them. On the other hand, the two evil dragons' counterattacks could always send Chen Yu flying after hitting it, and its injuries became even worse. There were a few new wounds on its body that was hundreds of meters long. Blood gushed out like spring water and dyed its icy blue hair. Chen Yu's strength was fading. It panted heavily, and its speed became slower and slower. When it was sent flying again by the evil dragons, a huge bloody hole appeared on its back, revealing its white bones. The evil flood dragon's secret attack also contained dark green venom. The poison had corroded Chen Yu's wounds and was quickly eating away at his flesh. Half of his body was paralyzed and he could not move. It had to heal itself as soon as possible and get rid of the poison in its body. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Unfortunately, the two evil flood dragons were coming at him with such ferocious momentum that they didn't give him any time to breathe. Soon, the overwhelming light blades and poisonous water columns were about to drown it. However, it had nowhere to hide and was about to suffer. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianxing finally arrived. He spread his large golden wings and stood in front of Chen Yu. Peng peng peng. The overwhelming light blades and poisonous water pillars struck the pair of golden wings, causing a loud explosion. The golden wings were completely unscathed and were still shining with a dazzling golden light. Ji Tianxing successfully blocked the attacks of the two flood dragons and took the opportunity to save Chen Yu and put it into the sword world. Chen Yu, go back and heal yourself quickly. I will take care of these two flood dragons. With Chen Yu's strength, it wouldn't be of much help if he continued to fight. Instead, his life would be in danger. If he returned to the sword world to heal himself, Ji Tianxing would be able to fight freely without any scruples. Soon, 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro joined forces and fought with the two flood dragons for more than 100 times. The two sides fought back and forth and the fight was extremely intense. Danger was everywhere. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro were extremely talented and had mastered all kinds of mysterious secret techniques. They kept using all kinds of secret techniques and beat the two flood dragons until they were covered in wounds. Blood splattered everywhere. As for themselves, they were protected by powerful Dharma treasures and didn't suffer too much damage. Suddenly, Ji Tianxing seized an opportunity and decisively swung the sword of burial of heaven. A dazzling cold light appeared. Cold sea. Peng. With a muffled sound, the flood dragon that was more seriously injured was hit by the sword light. The sword light happened to hit a wound on its tail and cut off its tail on the spot. A 10-meter-long broken tail was wrapped in a large puff of green liquid and blood and flew into the sky. The extreme pain caused the evil flood dragon to let out a painful roar. It opened its bloody mouth recklessly and released a poisonous fog that covered the sky and the sun, covering a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro had special physiques and were not afraid of the corrosion of hundreds of poisons. Ji Tianxing took this opportunity to hold the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his strength. Sky-splitting sword. He unleashed his strongest power and slashed out a giant sword that was hundreds of feet long towards the flood dragon. Kaboom! An earth-shattering sound exploded. The flood dragon's head was cut off and it fell from the sky into the ruins. Its flat and hard head was actually slashed into two, and its body was obliterated on the spot. Countless pieces of flesh mixed with venom and blood splattered in all directions. Swoosh! A green snake-shaped primordial spirit flew out of the corpse and fled to the eastern sky in panic. The other evil flood dragon was also heavily injured. Seeing that its companion's body was cut in half and only a primordial spirit was left, it panicked and quickly turned to escape. You still want to escape? Don't even think about it. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes, and he chased after it with a murderous aura. He used the divine concealment step, and his figure flickered in the sky a few times before he caught up with the snake-shaped primordial spirit. Star-shattering fist. He shouted angrily, raised his left palm, and blasted out a silver fist light. The fist shadow that was as huge as a house, with the power to destroy the world, smashed into the snake-shaped primordial spirit. The green snake primordial spirit was blasted into pieces on the spot and scattered in the sky. The primordial spirit fragments of the tribulation stage flood dragon are stronger than the primordial spirits of ordinary demonic beasts, and their effects are also more powerful, Ji Tianxing thought to himself. He waved his hand and shot out a big golden hand to collect all the primordial spirit fragments. Then, he continued to chase after the wounded flood dragon. He cut through the sky at lightning speed and flew to the east. The surviving flood dragon seemed to be scared out of its wits, and its speed was extremely fast. With the speed of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, they couldn't catch up with it for a while. After a full 100 breaths, the two sides chased each other in the sky for more than 300 miles. It was not until then that Ji Tianxing caught up with the flood dragon. However, just as he was about to attack, the flood dragon fell from the sky and drilled into a deep canyon. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment. Only then did he see clearly that there was a deep and narrow canyon 10 miles in front of him. On the left and right sides of the canyon, there were towering mountains thousands of feet high. Above the canyon, there were layers of clouds and mist, and the air was filled with the strong fragrance of green wood. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing immediately slowed down and observed with a frown. Chapter 1700. They were surrounded by dark green forests and mountain ranges. Only the Grand Canyon was filled with colorful and dazzling scenes. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. That canyon should be the 100-Flower Valley we're looking for. Originally, they were already close to the 100-Flower Valley. But because they had fought too many battles and exhausted their strength, they decided to rest on the mountain peak. Who would have thought that after being attacked by the two flood dragons, they would stumble into the 100-Flower Valley? Ji Tianxing sneered and murmured to himself, I didn't expect that the two dragons that attacked us were demon beasts of the 100-Flower Valley. It seems that the rumors are true. Not only does the 100-Flower Valley have pleasant scenery, it also has fatal dangers and dangers. Yun Yao followed beside him and looked down at the 100-Flower Valley. After observing for a while, she reminded, Tianxing, look at the fog above the canyon. It's probably not ordinary fog. Ji Tianxing nodded. Yes, it should be poisonous fog. There are all kinds of strange flowers and plants in the 100-Flower Valley, most of which are poisonous. Although we have special constitutions and are immune to poison, we still have to be careful. While talking, he flew towards the 100-Flower Valley with Yun Yao. In just 10 breaths, the two landed in the deep 100-Flower Valley. The canyon was 50 kilometers wide and ran north-south. It was unknown how many kilometers long it was. There were majestic mountain ranges on both sides of the valley. Dark green vines and moss crawled on the steep cliffs. The soil on the ground was fertile and moist. It was dark red and gave off a strong smell of rot. Strange flowers of different colors were blooming in the surrounding flowers. Some of them even bore fruit. Clumps of dark red lotus flowers formed a red carpet with a radius of 3,000 meters. Bright red blood mandara flowers were clustered together, quietly blooming and emitting traces of the stench of blood. Budding white jade peony, light purple hyacinths, light yellow evening primroses, pink albizari were scattered on the ground. There were also many forsythia, purple tea, and rarely seen flowers and plants. It was also a scene of colorful flowers. Ji Tianxing flew into the depths of Flower Valley while observing the flowers and plants along the way. He discovered that more than 80% of the flowers and plants were spiritual medicines with extraordinary effects. But for some reason, all the flowers and plants in the Flower Valley were different from the spiritual herbs he knew. They seemed to have mutated and contained a strong poison. He told Yunyaro about his discovery and said via voice transmission, "The flowers and plants in this place look like spirit herbs on the surface, but in fact, all of them are highly toxic. If an ignorant martial artist were to come here and suddenly discover so many precious spirit herbs, they would definitely pick them and then die from poisoning." Yunyaro nodded slightly in agreement, and said with a serious expression, "Look at those flowers and plants, they are abnormally strong and tall. They have been growing for at least a few hundred years. If they didn't contain any toxicity, those spirit herbs were all top-notch medicinal herbs. No wonder Luo Li said that there might be some kind of divine item hidden in the 100-Flower Valley. Only the power of a divine item can allow those ordinary flowers and plants to evolve into spirit herbs and grow for hundreds or thousands of years without withering." After pausing for a moment, she added, "The air is also filled with invisible poison that can erode and paralyze a martial artist's consciousness and soul. Although we can resist the corrosion of the poison, we can't stay here for too long. Otherwise, our consciousness and soul will also be damaged, leaving behind wounds that are difficult to heal. Also, I can vaguely feel that there is some kind of divine power in the depths of the valley, as if it is silently calling out to me." Ji Tianxing knew that Yunyaro had fused with 2 divine pearls. As long as she was within the range of the divine pearls, she could sense and connect with them. It seems that Luo Li's deduction is correct. There might be a divine pearl hidden in the depths of 100-Flower Valley. Yunyaro nodded, and a look of anticipation appeared in her eyes. "It should be so. But I don't understand. If there really is a divine pearl here, why would it be hidden here?" Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "There's no need to dwell on the reason. As long as we can find the divine pearl, we will be extremely lucky. Perhaps the divine pearl was left here, or perhaps it was originally somewhere else and was brought here for some reason. After all, divine monarch Naka Light has been dead for 30,000 years. In such a long time, the entire world has undergone tremendous changes. The world changes with each passing day. Therefore, it's not strange for the divine pearl to be scattered anywhere in the world." As they spoke, the 2 flew over the thousands of flowers and headed deep into Flower Valley. The deeper they went into Flower Valley, the more lush the flowers and plants on the ground became. Many of the flowers and plants had clearly mutated. Flowers and plants that were originally a foot tall could grow to 3 to 4 meters tall, like large trees. Many palm-sized flowers could grow to the size of a wash basin or even a millstone. Everything was mysterious and strange. What the 2 could confirm was that there was indeed a divine item hidden in the depths of Flower Valley. It was very likely the divine pearl that Yunyaro needed. Ji Tianxing guessed that it was the power of the divine pearl that allowed the flowers and plants in this valley to bloom. Furthermore, the flowers and plants had evolved and mutated, growing for thousands of years. As for why the flowers had mutated from spiritual herbs to poisonous herbs, there was no way to know. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing and Yunyaro traversed more than 50 kilometers in Flower Valley and arrived at its depths. There was a thick fog above their heads. It combined with the power of heaven and earth to form a powerful array formation that sealed the entire Flower Valley. The poison in the air was even more intense, causing their consciousness to fade and making it difficult for them to concentrate. The various flowers and plants on the ground had also become stronger. They had evolved and mutated so much that it was difficult to recognize them. The surroundings were quiet. It was as silent as death. Ji Tianxing and Yunyaro held their swords and slowed down as they vigilantly observed their surroundings. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the dense flowers in front of them. A sharp gust of wind blew. The 2 immediately stopped flying and looked ahead with sharp gazes. Soon, a dense crowd of figures emerged from the lush flowers and flew into the sky. Ji Tianxing immediately saw them clearly. They were more than 20 strange-looking demon beasts. Some of the demon beasts were humanoid. They had 4 limbs and a head, but their true forms were furry beasts. There were also some demon beasts that looked like ferocious beasts. Their bodies were filled with a strong murderous aura, but their true forms were tree demons. The hair on their bodies was made of leaves and branches. There were also some demon beasts that were originally common birds and beasts that had evolved and mutated into ferocious and terrifying demon beasts. A total of 26 demon beasts stood in the sky and blocked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro's path. Chapter 1701. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro gripped their swords tightly as they stared coldly at the Fey beasts. The duo could tell that the Fey beasts were at least at the 8th firmament essence soul realm. The strongest Fey beasts had already reached the peak 9th firmament essence soul realm and were about to face a heavenly tribulation. Without a doubt, this pack of ferocious Fey beasts possessed terrifying combat strength. The duo had to be careful or they might return in defeat. As Ji Tianxing observed the pack of Fey beasts, he sent a voice transmission to Yun Yaro. Yaro, there's only one path to enter the depths of Centauria Valley. We have to charge our way in. When the battle begins, just hold the fort for me. Do not charge in. I suspect that there are far more Fey beasts entrenched in Centauria Valley. Yun Yaro nodded and asked with a voice transmission, by the way, Tianxing, where's the little black dragon? How strong is it? Can it come out to help? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a heavy expression, I obtained a divine dragon crystal in the ruins of gods and gave it to the little black dragon. It is currently refining the divine dragon crystal and has been in a deep slumber. It has yet to awaken. We can only rely on ourselves for this battle. Yun Yaro nodded slightly as her eyes turned solemn. More than 20 Fey beasts stood in front of them, glaring at the duo. Their bodies emitted intense killing intent. However, they were highly intelligent. It was as though they were carrying out orders and were not in a hurry to attack. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he thought of something. Could it be that this pack of Fey beasts are just shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Do they have a stronger leader? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a strong gust of wind came from deep within Centauria Valley. A rich floral fragrance wafted over. In a few short seconds, a gigantic figure flew out of the fog and arrived in the middle of the pack of Fey beasts. Ji Tianxing focused his gaze and the first thing he saw was the azure WM that was covered in wounds. Its huge and sturdy body was originally covered with crisscrossing wounds and bloody holes, and its entire body was covered in blood. But now, the bloodstains all over its body had disappeared, and its wounds were gradually healing. Blood was no longer flowing out. It floated in midair, its flat head poking down and staring at Ji Tianxing. Its dark green eyes were filled with cold resentment. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro glanced at it, and their gazes fell on its back. On its broad back stood a huge figure that was 10 feet tall. It was a dark purple Yarrow Lord. It had the body of a human, but it had 4 muscular arms. Its body was very majestic. It was draped in a huge and tattered robe, and there were many rags hanging all over its body. Its head was like a strange purple flower, without a face or facial features. Without a doubt, it was a flower demon. On its left shoulder sat a petite banshee that looked like a human. The banshee was 2 meters tall, and her appearance was very similar to a human. She had a slim and healthy figure and a charming and beautiful face. She wore a light pink dress and had long dark green hair. She was barefooted and swayed her legs leisurely. After careful observation, Ji Tianxing discovered that this human-like woman was actually a flower demon. Moreover, there was a flower vine connecting her to the ugly flower demon. Her life force and dharmic power aura were also connected. Both of their strengths had reached the 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He muttered softly, as the ancient saying goes, flowers bloom on the same stem and branches are intertwined. Could it be that these 2 flower demons evolved from a single flower on a stem? Yun Yaro nodded slightly and replied in a low voice, I think so. The flower on a stem is rare, and it's even rarer for both of them to evolve into flower demons. These 2 flower demons are very strong, and they must have powerful magical techniques. We have to be careful. As soon as she finished speaking, the charming flower demoness covered her mouth with her hand and giggled. He. I didn't expect that the 2 insects that came to die in the Flower Valley were a pair of beautiful people. For thousands of years, countless insects of the human race have entered the Flower Valley and become fertilizer for the flowers. It's the first time I've seen such a talented couple with outstanding talents like you. I'm really looking forward to grinding your bones and scattering your ashes. I'll mix it with your blood and sprinkle it in the flower valley. I wonder if it'll have a miraculous effect." The flower demon's voice was very sharp, and she was speaking the human language of the divine item continent. Ji Tianxing looked at her coldly and said with a murderous aura, "Even if you have the appearance of a human and mastered the human language, you're still just a cruel flower demon. You're full of evil. Since you've met us today, you'll die." Hearing his words, the flower demon suddenly raised her head and laughed. "Ha ha ha ha. It's so funny. The number of insects of the human race that died under my claws is at least 800, if not 1,000. At least half of them would boast shamelessly like you before making a move, bluffing and bluffing. But in the end, when they were about to die under my claws, they would be terrified and desperate to the extreme. They would kneel and beg for mercy in all kinds of ugly ways. The human race is so sad." The ugly flower demon that carried her on its shoulder couldn't help but say something. It spoke with a middle-aged man's voice and said coldly, "Ming Lan, why are you talking nonsense with these two insects?" After saying that, it waved one of its thick and solid arms and ordered the 20 over demonic beasts, "Kill those two worms for this monarch and tear them into pieces." The more than 20 demon beasts received the order and let out sharp roars. They rushed toward Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow as fast as lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The demon beasts released colorful lights, which condensed into light blades that covered the sky. They covered Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. They divided the work and cooperated with each other very well. A few demon beasts stood in the outer circle and kept releasing demon beasts, poisonous fog, and venom. They attacked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow fiercely. The demon beasts, who were good at close combat, rushed forward bravely and waved their sharp claws to attack. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were immediately surrounded. They were in danger. The ferocious cyan dragon carried the two twin flower demons on its back and stood in midair, admiring the fierce battle. Ji Tianxing was fearless. He waved the burial of heaven's sword with all his strength and used his secret sword technique to resist the attacks of the demon beasts. Yun Yarrow also waved her sword and used her technique with a serious face. Her figure was like a graceful swan, flashing continuously in the air. Light blades and sword lights covered the sky and earth. All kinds of colorful magical lights collided fiercely. Boom boom boom. Loud noises kept echoing in the flower valley and didn't disappear for a long time. Chapter 1702. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow fought with more than 20 demon beasts for 100 seconds. Within a radius of dozens of miles, everything had turned into a desolate ruin. The flowers on the ground had been smashed into pieces by the aftermath of the battle. The fertile black and red ground was full of deep pits and gullies. Many demon beasts' bodies were scattered around. In the battle just now, 6 demon beasts had been killed. Their bodies had been smashed into pieces and mixed with blood on the ground. The cliffs on both sides of the valley had also been smashed into pieces and were full of cracks. Fortunately, the mountains on both sides were protected by a mysterious force. Otherwise, the two mountains would have collapsed and turned into ruins. Meteor fire shower, Ji Tianxing suddenly shouted. He waved his hands and performed a mysterious spell, releasing a terrifying secret technique. Endless flames quickly gathered in the sky above the flower valley and turned into an overwhelming fireball, pouring down like a rainstorm. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the area within a few dozen miles was turned into a sea of fire. The extremely violent Tiangang Crimson Fire drowned more than 20 demon beasts. Even the evil green dragon hurriedly retreated a few dozen miles and escaped from the sea of fire. The 22 primordial soul realm demonic beasts struggled in the sea of fire as they let out shrill and painful cries. Almost all of the demon beasts were burned by the Tiangang Crimson Fire. Their bodies were charred black and smoke billowed out. The 5 weaker demonic beasts had already suffered heavy injuries. Now that they were burned by the raging fire, they were burned into charcoal on the spot and scattered in the sea of fire. Even their essence souls were severely injured. They flew out of the sea of fire and fled into the depths of the flower valley. Ji Tianxing had been prepared. How could he let them escape so easily? Star-breaking fist. He swung his fists repeatedly, sending out a few dazzling golden fist auras towards the few primordial spirits. With a series of muffled bangs, the nascent divinities were immediately destroyed and shattered into pieces. Yun Yarrow also took advantage of the situation to display her ultimate skill. She waved her sword and released a destructive power. Starfall. In the sky above the Flower Valley, 12 bright silver lights immediately appeared, like 12 dazzling stars. Every star was burning with silver sparks. They fell from the sky and hit several demonic beasts on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. A few deafening explosions erupted, causing the entire 100-Flower Valley to tremble violently. Several demonic beasts were killed on the spot. Their bodies turned into pieces of flesh and blood, and even their primordial spirits were blasted into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the number of demonic beasts decreased sharply, leaving only 11. Moreover, the 11 demonic beasts were still struggling in the sea of fire, and their injuries were getting worse and worse. Seeing this, the twin flower demons were enraged and let out furious roars. The flower demoness frowned and cursed with a cold expression, "Damned insects, I underestimated you." The ugly flower demon roared with murderous intent, "You destroyed my flower valley and killed my servant. You deserve to die." As it roared, the ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released green poison that covered the sky and earth, pouring it into the sea of fire. TSK, TSK, TSK. The terrifying green poison fell into the sea of fire and quickly extinguished the Big Dipper crimson fire. The ground within a 60-mile radius turned into a charred ruin, and thick smoke was still rising. The 11 wounded demonic beasts escaped from the charred ruins as if they had been pardoned and returned to the side of the evil green dragon. "Let me kill them myself." The ugly flower demon roared and rode the evil dragon towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. It raised its 4 arms that were 15 meters long and extended hundreds of dark green vines that were as thick as buckets. They stabbed straight at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow like spears. Each dark green vine was as hard as a tribulation-grade Dharma treasure, and its aura was extremely fierce. No matter if it was an iron wall or a Dharma treasure shield, it could not stop the vines from stabbing. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were surrounded by countless vines, and there was nowhere for them to escape. The 2 of them were about to be pierced into sieves. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing shouted calmly and held Yun Yarrow in his arms. "Golden rock wings unite." The golden wings on his back immediately opened and covered him and Yun Yarrow, protecting them closely. Hundreds of dark green vines stabbed the golden wings like sharp swords, and a series of dull, loud noises were heard. Bang, 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 bang. The golden wings kept shaking and flashing with dazzling golden light, but they were not damaged at all. On the contrary, the dark green vines were knocked back and tangled together in a messy way. The ugly flower demon was startled for a moment before it hurriedly used a secret technique to release an endless amount of poisonous gas. Swish, swish, swish. Hundreds of vines spurted out dark green gas at the same time, enveloping Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. The dark green poisonous gas had an extremely powerful corrosive power and could paralyze and destroy a warrior's essence soul. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow immediately felt dizzy, and their essence souls were tingling. What a powerful poison! If we weren't protected by the Kenshin battle robes, we would have been corroded by the poison immediately and our essence souls would have been damaged. Ji Tianxing exclaimed in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with cold killing intent. He flew 5 kilometers away with Yun Yarrow and escaped from the dark green poisonous fog. He had just spread his golden wings and was about to counterattack with his sword. At this time, the flower demoness waved her slender arms, releasing an overwhelming amount of pink petals that poured down like raindrops. The tens of thousands of pink petals looked very beautiful. They were like dancing butterflies, and also like pink snowflakes falling. However, Ji Tianxing's expression changed, and fear flashed in his eyes. He could clearly sense that each of the pink petals contained a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. In the next moment, the sky full of petals fell on top of his and Yun Yarrow's heads and immediately exploded. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion sounded in the air, shaking the entire 100-Flower Valley. Every single pink petal was glowing with a blinding dark red light, exuding a power that could destroy everything in its path. The ground within a radius of 100 miles was instantly blasted into a deep crater. Endless amounts of soil flew up into the sky, turning into fine powder and drifting down. The ground within 100 miles was shaved off by dozens of feet, and the entire flower valley shook violently. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing sensed the danger in advance and used the divine concealment step to escape dozens of miles away with Yun Yao. Moreover, he used the golden rock wings to protect himself and Yun Yao at the critical moment. The destructive shockwave blasted him and Yun Yao more than 15 miles away and smashed into the ruins. 100 feet deep pit was formed on the ground, and the two of them were buried underground by dust. After a while, the two of them struggled to fly out of the deep pit, shook off the soil on their bodies, and flew back into the sky. Chapter 1703. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were both heavily injured. Their dharmic powers were in a mess, and they were panting heavily. Fortunately, they had the Kenshin battle robes, which helped them block most of the power. If not for that, they would have been blasted into pieces by the terrifying petal shower. Such a dangerous encounter made them realize that the twin flower demons were very powerful and difficult to deal with. The two of them quickly adjusted their breathing and suppressed their internal injuries. After a while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated in the sky also gradually stopped. Seeing Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao standing in the sky unscathed, the female flower demon frowned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? They are only in the essence soul realm. How can they not die? The female flower demon's eyes were filled with a cold light. Her body was filled with anger and murderous intent. The ugly flower demon was silent for a while. Then, it said in a low voice, they must have powerful Dharma treasures. They must also have extraordinary skills. Such talented human cultivators are really rare. It's a pity to use them as fertilizer for the flowers. The female flower demon immediately understood what it meant. She licked her lips with bloodthirsty eyes and said with a cold smile, "That's right. If we can devour their flesh and essence souls, we will definitely reap great benefits." At this moment, the 11 surviving demon beasts saw that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were injured. They pounced on them without any regard for their own safety. They spread out and formed a battle line. They joined forces to release dharmic powers that covered the sky and earth. Colorful dharmic powers fell from the sky towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao with destructive power. The sky within a 50-kilometer radius was lit up again. The air was filled with violent power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao hurriedly waved their swords. Their faces were cold as they used their secret techniques to counterattack. Boom, boom, boom. Dazzling sword gleams and dharmic powers clashed fiercely in the sky. There was a deafening sound, and shockwaves were created. Colorful shockwaves spread out like ripples, fiercely attacking the surroundings. The ground, which had long been in ruins, was continuously shaved off layer after layer by the shockwave, filling the air with smoke and dust. The mountain ranges on both sides of the flower valley were also shattered by the impact. Cracks constantly appeared, and countless pieces of soil and gravel collapsed. The battle between the two sides caused the flower valley to be constantly destroyed, turning it into a tragic sight. However, the battle between Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the 11 demon beasts only lasted for 100 breaths. Those demon beasts were already severely injured and only had strength at the 8th or 9th tier of the essence soul realm. How could they withstand the attacks of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao? The husband and wife joined forces to unleash a secret technique, and actually killed the 11 demonic beasts one by one. All of them were chopped into pieces. Even the primordial spirits of those demonic beasts could not escape the fate of being destroyed. After 100 breaths, the battle stopped. Pieces of flesh and blood were scattered all over the ruins in a radius of 100 miles. They were all severed limbs of the demonic beasts. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were both bathed in blood. Their hair was disheveled as they stood above the ruins. The two of them had exhausted too much of their dharmic powers. They had no choice but to take out pills and consume them to silently recover their dharmic powers. In the sky in front of them, the evil green dragon carried the twin flower demons and flew over at a moderate speed. It stopped 1,000 feet away from the two of them. The two sides faced each other above the ruins that were filled with smoke and dust. Both of them were filled with murderous intent, and their postures were unyielding. The evil flower demon stood on the back of the evil dragon, while the female flower demon stood on its shoulder. They looked down at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The female flower demon stared at the two of them coldly. She said in a serious tone, "I have to admit that your strength and methods have indeed surprised me. I can't remember how many years it has been since I last met such monstrous warriors like you. Actually, I admire genius warriors like you very much. Therefore, I will give you one last chance. Kneel down and admit defeat. If you submit to me, I will spare your lives." The evil flower demon also said in a powerful voice, "If you are loyal enough and perform well, I will teach you the secret of immortality and appoint you to lead the entire illusory mountain reign." Its voice was filled with a powerful soul-sucking power. It contained the power to suck one's soul. If a warrior's mind was weak and did not have enough willpower, they would be bewitched by its voice. Their willpower would also waver. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were not ordinary people. The two of them had strong willpower. They did not take the twin flower demon's words to heart at all. Ji Tianxing secretly transmitted his voice to Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, the flower demon mentioned the secret of immortality. It is probably referring to the divine pearl hidden in the flower valley." "Yes." Yun Yao nodded and said in a serious tone, "According to the situation in the 100 Flower Valley, that divine pearl is very likely the divine pearl of immortality. I can sense that the divine pearl is not on the twin flower demons. It is still in the depths of the 100 Flower Valley." A murderous intent flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes. He said in a low voice, "It seems that we have to get rid of the twin flower demons to find that divine pearl." Just as the two of them were discussing through voice transmissions, the female flower demon saw that the two of them did not respond. She was enraged and urged, "Bastards, did you hear what I said? My patience is limited. I will only give you 10 seconds to consider. After 10 seconds, if you do not submit, only death awaits you." When she finished speaking, Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked at her coldly. His lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "You are just a flower demon. How dare you be so arrogant? What a joke. Why do you need 10 seconds? Let me tell you now. You want us to submit. You are not worthy. The ones who will die are you." As he spoke, a golden light surged from Ji Tianxing's body and a murderous aura that shook the heavens. A giant golden sword that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him and flew into the sky. The majestic and dazzling sword flickered with golden light and exuded a sacred aura. "White Tiger Sacred Sword." Ji Tianxing roared with murderous intent. He controlled the 1,000 feet tall golden sword and slashed it at the twin flower demons. The golden light from the giant sword condensed into the image of a white tiger that was as large as a mountain. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws. This sword was like a golden rainbow that split the sky. It could split the heavens and earth. Its power was so terrifying that the twin flower demon's expressions changed. The giant sword locked onto the evil green dragon's aura. Its eyes were filled with fear. However, it was carrying the twin flower demons and did not dare to act on its own. It could only brace itself and face the attack. The twin flower demons worked together to cast a spell. They released vines and 5 colored lights that covered the sky and earth to meet the white tiger sacred sword. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, a deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. The dazzling golden light and 5 colored lights instantly collapsed and spread in all directions, covering a radius of hundreds of miles. The giant white tiger image also enveloped the twin flower demons and the evil green dragon. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions, creating a monstrous hurricane. Chapter 1704. The loud noise shook the heavens, and the earth trembled violently. The entire flower valley shook, and the mountains on both sides collapsed, collapsing countless boulders and soil. The power of the white tiger sacred sword was terrifying. Everything within a few hundred miles was shaken, and almost turned into ruins. The twin flower demons' counterattack was shattered by the giant sword, and they collapsed on the spot. They were also hit by the giant sword, and they screamed as they flew backward, crashing 20 miles away. Just as they were about to crash into the ground, the ugly flower demons extended hundreds of vines and stabbed them into the ground, finally stabilizing their bodies. With their tribulation transcendence realm strength, they quickly offset the power of the white tiger sacred sword and only suffered minor injuries. However, the evil green dragon was unlucky. It did not have time to dodge, and it was not as powerful as the twin flower demons. It was hit by the white tiger sacred sword on the spot. The 1,000 feet tall primordial soul golden sword cut it in half. The cut was very smooth, and dark red blood spurted out like a fountain. The extreme pain made it try its best to open its flat mouth and let out a sharp and ear-piercing hiss. The two halves of the body fell into the ruins, twisting and bouncing madly. Its vitality was incomparably tenacious. Even if its body was cut in half, its body could still survive. Swoosh! The severed tail flew toward the front half of its body, trying to reattach it. However, Ji Tianxing controlled the primordial soul golden sword and slashed with all his strength. Bam! With a deafening muffled sound, the primordial soul golden sword slashed the evil dragon's head. Its flat head was split open by the giant sword on the spot, and blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. A dark green eyeball was mixed in with it. With this sword, the evil dragon was killed on the spot. It could not be more dead. Not only was its body destroyed, but even its primordial soul did not have time to escape and was instantly killed by the golden sword. After the broken corpse twitched a few times, it fell powerlessly into the ruins. The flying soil quickly buried its body. The evil dragon, which was at the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm, was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that. The twin flower demons witnessed the entire process with their own eyes. They were stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. When they came back to their senses, they became even more furious and irritable. Monstrous killing intent surged out from their bodies and condensed into blood-red flames around them. Damned reptile, I'll tear you to shreds. Die. Only by torturing and killing all of you 10 times can this monarch's hatred be dispelled. The twin flower demons roared with murderous intent. They immediately charged over and used their secret techniques to attack Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Heart-slaying evil spear. Flying flower remnant dream. The ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released thousands of dark green vines, which transformed into thousands of javelins that were over 100 feet long. They rained down on Ji Tianxing and his companion. Every spear formed from vines was comparable to a low-grade tribulation-level magical treasure. They could pierce through all obstacles and unleash destructive power. Thousands of sharp spears stabbed at the same time, sealing off the area within a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had nowhere to run. The female flower demon waved her slender arms and palms, scattering colorful petals that blotted out the sky and earth. The seemingly weak and colorful petals were highly toxic and could unleash destructive power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already seen the power of the petal shower, so they naturally didn't dare to be careless. Seeing the rain of spears coming at them, the couple's expressions turned serious. Intense fear flashed across their eyes. Ji Tianxing was about to spread his golden wings to protect himself and Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao was faster than him. She hurriedly took out a palm-sized ice crystal statue and raised it above her head. This ice crystal statue was a lifelike woman in a blue dress. That woman's face was beautiful and graceful. Her aura was mysterious and holy. Without a doubt, this was the statue of the Luo Shui martial god. Boundless dharmic powers surged out of Yun Yao's palm and entered the statue of the Luo Shui martial god. Immediately, the ice crystal statue emitted a dazzling icy blue light, forming a light screen that was 100 feet in radius. The icy blue light screen immediately enveloped Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing, protecting them tightly. In the next moment, the overwhelming spears and the rain of flowers struck the icy blue light screen at the same time. Boom! 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 Amidst the earth-shattering sounds, the dark green rattan spears and colorful petals exploded, unleashing destructive power. The icy blue light screen trembled violently from the explosion, creating layers of ripples. However, Yun Yao stood upright. Her hand holding the ice crystal statue did not move at all. Her expression was firm. The icy blue light screen was also undamaged. Not a single crack appeared. It was peaceful inside the light screen. It was not affected at all. Outside the light screen, however, was another scene. It was like another world. The destructive power of the explosion blasted the ruins and the mountain ranges on both sides of the Flower Valley into huge craters that were thousands of feet deep. Within 200 miles, there was not a single mountain range or mound. Not even a stone the size of a water tank could be found. Whether it was the towering mountain range or the millstone, they were all blasted into powder. Such a pitilessly terrifying power was truly capable of destroying everything. After a long time, the smoke and dust in the sky dissipated. The area within 200 miles had completely turned into a 1,000-foot deep crater. It was impossible to distinguish the valley from the flat ground. Half of the Flower Valley was destroyed just like that. Only then did Yunyaro put away the ice crystal statue and remove the icy blue light screen. Ji Tianxing glanced at the ice crystal statue and asked telepathically, "Yarrow Yarrow, what treasure is this?" Yunyaro hurriedly replied, "It's a protective treasure that Granny Long gave me, the Luotian spirit. It can only be used 3 times, and the statue will shatter." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. Then, he and Yunyaro flew across the sky side by side and headed straight for the twin flower demons. The twin flower demons were 20 miles away in the sky. They were looking around with pity. The Flower Valley was their home. Now that 1/3 of it had been destroyed, how could they not be heartbroken? The most hateful thing was that even though they had sacrificed so much, they were unable to hurt Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Seeing that the 2 of them were unharmed, the twin flower demons were furious and shocked. They turned around and fled into the depths of the Flower Valley without hesitation. Damn bastards. They really do have powerful protective treasures. We can't fight them head-on. Let's avoid them for now. The 2 secret techniques just now were the twin flower demons' most powerful techniques. If Yunyaro did not use the Divine Master statue, she and Ji Tianxing would have been killed. The twin flower demons knew that even if they continued fighting, they would not be able to gain the upper hand. Since that was the case, they could only escape into the depths of the Flower Valley and think of another way. Swoosh! The twin flower demons turned into a dark green stream of light and streaked across the sky, heading straight for the depths of the Flower Valley. Ji Tianxing and Yunyaro also flew across the sky and chased after them. Chapter 1705. In the depths of the 100-Flower Valley. The ground of the 100-mile-wide valley was covered in lush flowers and plants. Almost every flower and plant was an evolved version of ordinary spirit herbs. They grew extremely strong and demonic. The air was filled with the pungent smell of pollen, which contained a strong poison. In addition, Ji Tianxing and Yunyaro could sense that the world was filled with strong divine power fluctuations. Yunyaro used her mind to sense and could clearly sense that the divine pearl's aura was nearby. The husband and wife stood in the sky, holding swords in their hands as they looked coldly ahead. 5 kilometers ahead was the end of the Flower Valley. At the end of the valley was a 2-kilometer-tall mountain. The mountain walls below the mountainside were covered in moss, vines, and green weeds. There was a huge cave at the foot of the mountain. A circle of purple-red poisonous flowers climbed up the cave entrance. The twin flower demons stood outside the cave, facing off against Ji Tianxing and his wife. Without a doubt, that ancient cave was the twin flower demon's lair. Damned insects, how dare you chase us here? You're courting death. The twin flower demons stared at Ji Tianxing and Yunyaro with venomous eyes, and sneered mockingly. We've occupied this Flower Valley for 2,000 years. During this time, who knows how many warriors have entered this place, but they were all killed by us. Haven't you ever thought about why we're invincible? At this moment, the twin flower demons no longer had a trace of worry or fear. Her expression and tone were filled with absolute confidence and a strong sense of success. Yunyaro glanced at her and turned to look around. She said calmly, "You're relying on nothing more than the divine item hidden in the Flower Valley. Since we dared to enter this place, we have enough confidence to kill you and take the divine item. I don't know what you're so proud of." Hearing this, the twin flower demon's smile instantly froze. Her expression and eyes slowly turned cold. She frowned fiercely. Her eyes were filled with strong killing intent as she sneered again. "Heh heh heh. No wonder you guys pressed on step by step and rushed here without a care for anything. It turns out that you guys have long coveted this monarch's treasure. Since that's the case, then all the more you deserve to die. You only know that there are divine items in the depths of Flower Valley, but you don't know that this is not a treasure trove or a holy land, but a purgatory of death. As soon as she finished speaking, Ji Tianqing frowned and said coldly, "You talk too much nonsense." As he spoke, he once again summoned his primordial spirit golden sword, and his entire body radiated a golden light that soared into the sky. In addition, the sword of burial of heaven also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 3,000 meters, transforming into a towering pitch-black sword. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing turned into a golden light and merged with the golden sword. Immediately after, the burial of heaven fused with the essence soul golden sword, causing the golden sword's power to increase by several times. The golden sword of the soul had also turned dark gold, mixed with wisps of mysterious black light. Heaven-splitting sword. The giant sword descended from the sky and slashed towards the twin flower demons with an unparalleled divine power. Before the sword radiance arrived, the terrifying suppressive force had already suppressed the twin flower demons, making it difficult for them to move and slowing them down by more than 2 times. The twin flower demon's divine soul aura was also locked down. This sword had nowhere to run, and there was no way for them to avoid it. Damn it! The twin flower demon's expression changed drastically, and they let out a furious scream. The ugly flower demon did not have time to use its trump card, so it could only use its ultimate technique with all its might to block the attack of the giant sword of the soul. At the critical moment, it waved its 4 arms wildly, releasing thousands of green vines that wrapped around the giant sword of the soul. The flower demoness unleashed all of her power, releasing a multicolored radiance that formed a gigantic barrier of light, blocking the sky above her head. Bang! 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 At the same time, the destructive giant sword of the soul slashed down fiercely, hitting countless vines and the colorful light shield. Those flexible vines were impervious to water and fire, and could withstand the attack of a tribulation-level Dharma treasure. However, they couldn't withstand the power of the sword. At least 500 vines were severed on the spot by the giant sword of the soul. They turned into pieces and flew out. Immediately after, the giant sword of the soul shattered the colorful light shield and slashed the twin flower demons. Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening sound, the twin flower demons were slashed into the ground by the giant sword. A 15-kilometer-long ravine was formed on the ground that was covered in flowers. It was like a natural chasm. The entire flower valley trembled violently and shook crazily. The violent shockwave swept to both sides like a huge wave, crushing countless flowers and plants. The mountain ranges on both sides of the flower valley were also torn apart by the impact and collapsed with a rumble. The golden light and dust that blotted out the sky lasted for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianqing returned to Yun Yaro's side. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand, and the 10,000 feet tall essence soul golden sword floated in the sky behind him. In front of him and Yun Yaro, the ground had already turned into ruins. It was covered in cracks and fragments of flowers and plants. A series of rustling sounds came from the wide and deep ravine. A moment later, the twin flower demons flew out of the ravine and returned to the sky. Although the twin flower demons were powerful and successfully blocked the sword and were not killed, they were in a miserable state. However, their appearances were extremely miserable. They were already heavily injured. The ugly flower demon's body had been split into 2. It had lost 2 arms and half of its body. There was no bleeding from its wounds, but dark green liquid kept flowing out. It dripped onto the ground and corroded the soil into ashes. Half of the female flower demon's head had been chopped off, and her left arm had disappeared. Green liquid kept gushing out of the wound. Dense green sprouts and branches also appeared. It looked rather strange. They secretly used a mystic technique to absorb some kind of energy and were healing their injuries. Those hideous and terrifying wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and new bodies were quickly growing out. The flower demoness glared at Ji Tianqing with venomous eyes. Her voice was hoarse as she growled, "You damned reptile, I will let you have your soul devoured by 10,000 poisons and die in extreme pain." As she roared, The female flower demon waved her arms as fast as lightning and formed several array seals. 10,000 poisons soul-devouring array. The ugly flower demons also joined forces to cast a spell. They waved their arms and released an earth-shattering radiance of Dharma power. Suddenly, all the flowers and plant fragments within a 100-mile radius silently melted into 5-colored air currents and gathered in the sky. In a short while, the entire flower valley turned into a grayish-brown desert. There was no green or color at all. The endless 5-colored air currents condensed into a thick sky curtain that covered the entire 100-mile radius. This area had been sealed. After the formation was formed, it gathered a powerful force of heaven and earth and fiercely suppressed Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The poisonous gas in the air suddenly became dozens of times stronger. There were also many types of poisons. Chapter 1706. Even though Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had special physiques and were immune to all poisons, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had the talent of being immune to poison. However, the formation cast by the twin flower demons contained the poisonous power of tens of thousands of poisonous flowers and herbs. Its power was extremely terrifying. If it were an ordinary essence soul realm cultivator, they would have been corroded by the poison on the spot and turned into a pool of blood. The two of them were only corroded by the poison, and their internal organs were slightly injured. It was already a very rare thing. Moreover, Ji Tianxing took out a pale golden pill from his interspatial ring and handed it to Yun Yao. After Yun Yao took the pill, the effects of the pill quickly suppressed the poison in her body. Ji Tianxing secretly activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl and used the sacred white light to quickly remove the poison. In the blink of an eye, the two of them returned to normal. Black blood no longer flowed out of their mouths and noses. The two of them joined forces to cast spells and used all their strength to resist the suppression. The twin flower demons were shocked when they saw this scene. They only felt disbelief. How is this possible? My soul-devouring poison is actually ineffective against them. Even a tribulation transcendence realm cultivator would be severely injured after being corroded by the soul-devouring poison, let alone an essence soul realm cultivator. These two human worms can actually resist the power of the soul-devouring poison and the suppression of the formation. It's simply unbelievable. The two flower demons were shocked. Their hearts were filled with horror and anger. They desperately released their dharmic powers and fully activated the power of the formation to suppress Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Suddenly, the power of the soul-devouring poison that filled the world more than doubled. The poison was originally invisible, but now it appeared as colorful air currents that intertwined and flowed in the sky. Over 10,000 types of highly toxic poisons were gathered together, emitting an incomparably fishy and pungent smell that caused one's head to swell, and caused one's divine sense to become blurry and chaotic. The suppression power of the formation also increased by about 2 times. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's faces became as pale as paper again. Cold sweat broke out all over their bodies, and their bodies became much more bent. However, the two of them used their secret techniques and tenaciously held on. As for the 5-colored poison between heaven and earth, the two of them relied on the effects of the heaven-mending beads and medicinal pills to keep the poison out of their bodies. A full 100 breaths of time passed. Their complexions became even paler. Their bodies were drenched in sweat, and their waists were bent over in pain. Other than that, neither of them were injured, nor did they fall. This result made the twin flower demons even more shocked and furious. The flower demoness' dark purple pupils flashed with fury and killing intent. She said in a low voice, "Underworld tree, we can't go on like this. The strength of those two insects is far beyond our imagination. I'm afraid they will be able to hold on for a long time. We haven't met such a difficult opponent in over 500 years. The flower valley that we have painstakingly built has been destroyed in a day. If we don't execute those two worms and use the cruelest method to kill them, how can we vent our hatred?" The ugly flower demon twisted its body and growled murderously. "If that's the case, we can only use that trump card. I don't believe that after using those 2 trump cards, I won't be able to kill those 2 worms." The flower demoness licked her lips and nodded. "All right, we'll do it the same way." Then, she waved her slender arms. Purple light shot into the sky from her body and turned into a blood-colored figure that was hundreds of meters tall. She, who was originally small, had turned into a huge and tall blood-colored giant. Her figure was hazy and blurry, and her appearance was hideous and terrifying. She was like a demon that had walked out of hell. She chanted an ancient and mysterious incantation and waved her 6 arms to form profound and mysterious seals. Suddenly, purple-red blood energy rushed out from the depths of the flower valley and madly gathered on her body. Her hundreds of meters tall blood-colored body became even more solid and thick, and gave off a powerful oppressive aura. She stared at Yunyaro with a pair of large eyes that were shrouded in blood flames. She waved her enormous palms and sent out blood-colored palms that covered the sky. The ugly flower demon's enormous body also gave off a green light that covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a dark green tree demon that was hundreds of meters tall. It had 2 enormous legs that were covered in roots. Its arms also turned into tens of thousands of green vines that looked like tens of thousands of tentacles. After it used its secret technique, a green light shot into the sky from the depths of the flower valley. A huge green pearl slowly flew out. That pearl was as big as a wash basin. After it broke out of the ground, it flew into the sky and quickly merged with the tree demon's body. Suddenly, its strength increased by more than 5 times. It became extremely powerful and sacred. It opened its enormous mouth and let out an angry roar. It waved its tens of thousands of vines and sent out thousands of threads of green light. Tens of thousands of rays of green light, like a rain of light blades and arrows, enveloped Ji Tianxing. When Yunyaro saw the green pearl, her body immediately shook, and her eyes surged with a strong sense of surprise and anticipation. She could clearly feel that it was the green pearl that had been calling out to her. However, the giant tree demon had swallowed the green pearl. Without waiting for her to react, the blood-red palm shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came straight at her. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing, who was not far away, shouted in a low voice, "Yarrow Yarrow, you deal with the tree demon. I'll deal with that flower demon." Obviously, this was the best choice. The hundreds of blood-red palm shadows that the flower demon had sent out contained a surging and strange demonic power. Ji Tianxing just happened to be able to counter it. Meanwhile, the rain of green light arrows released by the giant tree demon was closely related to Yunyao. She could also deal with it. Yunyao's mind was connected with his, so she immediately understood what he meant. Swoosh! Yunyao ignored the blood-red palm shadows that filled the sky. She waved her sword toward the rain of green light arrows and used a secret technique to block it. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. He waved his hand and sent out a holy white light toward the dozens of blood-red palm shadows. Bam, 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 bam. In the next moment, a series of muffled sounds exploded in the flower valley. After the dozens of blood-red palm shadows were enveloped by the holy white light, they immediately melted like snow under the hot sun. Yunyao also used a secret technique to destroy the rain of green light arrows. She quickly swallowed the green light fragments. The trump card of the 2 flower demons was easily neutralized just like that. The 2 of them were stunned on the spot. They stared at Ji Tianxing and Yunyao, dumbfounded. Their bodies seemed to have turned to stone. How is this possible? That's our most powerful trump card, our most sacred divine item. How did they block it? Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the 2 flower demons could not believe this scene. They could not accept this result. The blood-red light that surged out of the ground and the green pearl were the divine items that created the flower valley. They were also the source of power that gave birth to the twin flower demons. They treated these 2 treasures like gods and treated them as their strongest trump cards. However, even after using their most powerful trump cards, they still could not defeat Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Chapter 1707. The 2 flower demons fell into a daze for a few breaths. Ji Tianxing didn't stop. After defeating the bloody palm, he immediately counterattacked. Vermilion bird sacred sword. His body turned into a blazing fire, and a 1,000-meter-tall essence soul sword appeared behind him. The burial of heaven sword also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 10,000 feet. It was as sacred and majestic as a giant pillar supporting the sky. The three instantly merged into a 1,000-meter-long giant sword surrounded by crimson fire. Whoosh! The giant sword unleashed an unparalleled power. Wrapped in a mountain-sized vermilion bird phantom, it slashed down from the sky toward Ming Lan. At that moment, the area within hundreds of miles was illuminated by fire. Half the sky turned crimson. The terrifying heat scorched the ground and the mountains into black scorched earth. When the giant sword was above her head, Ming Lan suddenly came to her senses. But before she could dodge, the vermilion bird sacred sword struck her head. Bam! With a deafening sound, Ming Lan's 1,000-meter-tall body was shattered into pieces by the giant sword. She collapsed into a bloody mist that blotted out the sky. Thousands of wisps of bloody mist spread out and mixed with the blazing crimson fire. It was difficult to distinguish them. The vermilion bird sacred sword struck the ground, creating a 50-mile-long trench in the ground. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. Half of the Flower Valley was destroyed on the spot, turning into black scorched earth ruins. The mountains and hills on both sides of the Flower Valley were also flattened. The entire Flower Valley was destroyed, turning into a giant crater. The dense scarlet mist quickly gathered together, trying to reform the body. But Ji Tianxing was prepared. The vermilion bird sacred sword quickly separated, and his figure appeared. You're related to the demon race and even used their secret arts. Damn it! His eyes were cold as he shouted angrily. He waved his palms and sent out a white light toward the bloody mist. Whoosh! The sacred white light enveloped an area of dozens of miles, enveloping the thousands of wisps of bloody mist. The evil bloody mist quickly dissipated when it met the sacred white light and was purified into nothingness. In just a few breaths of time, the blood mist that filled the sky was completely wiped out and purified. The female flower demon Ming Lan was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that, not leaving behind a trace. The tree demon, the underworld tree, escaped from this area in a sorry state. It pierced through the white light and flew out 30 miles. It witnessed Ming Lan's death with its own eyes, and it was so angry that its eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It let out a furious howl. Reptile! You actually killed this monarch's wife. This monarch will grind your bones to dust. Ah! Unparalleled anger caused the underworld tree to descend into madness. Its 300-meter-tall tree demon body trembled violently as it crazily twisted its tens of thousands of vines, stabbing towards Ji Tianxing without any regard for the consequences. Supported by the power of the cyan light pearl, each of those vines extended for tens of miles, looking like a sharp spear that was about to pierce Ji Tianxing into a sieve. However, before the green glowing vines could reach them, Yun Yao charged forward with her sword. Demons and monsters, quickly disperse. Heavenly water thousand swords art. She waved her sword, and her sleeves fluttered as sword light filled the sky. She released 9,999 rays of icy blue sword light that pierced forward like a flood. Bam bam bam! The icy blue sword light collided with the green glowing vines, causing a series of earth-shattering explosions that shook the earth for hundreds of miles. Without a doubt, all of the icy blue sword light was destroyed, turning into ice fragments that scattered among the ruins. The green glowing vines' power was also greatly reduced. When they reached Yun Yarrow, they were blocked by an icy blue light screen. Yun Yarrow gripped the ice crystal statue with a serious expression and injected vast amounts of magic power into it, activating a light screen that was hundreds of meters wide. The endless green glowing vines stabbed into the light screen, causing muffled bam 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 sounds. The light screen trembled violently and rippled, but it was still unbreakable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing used the spirit concealment step and charged to the side of the underworld tree. The underworld tree sensed that something was wrong and immediately wanted to retract its vines. At the same time, a dark green light surged out of its body, forming a huge shield to protect itself. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Ji Tianxing stared at it fiercely. He suddenly raised his left hand and let out a murderous roar. God-slaying spear. Vast golden flames surged out of his left palm, forming a golden spear that was hundreds of meters long. He stabbed it at the underworld tree. Pop! With the sound of a bubble bursting, The dark green shield protecting the underworld tree was instantly pierced by the golden spear and shattered into pieces. Then, the invincible golden spear stabbed into the underworld tree's head and exploded with a boom. A dazzling golden mushroom cloud rose into the air. The dazzling golden light illuminated half of the flower valley, and even the sky was illuminated in a dazzling light. The underworld tree's 100-meter-tall body was blasted into tens of thousands of pieces and scattered in all directions. A dark green pearl was also tossed into the sky among the countless fragments of the branches. Yun Yarrow was already ready. She immediately flew over and shot out a ray of icy blue light, grabbing the dark green pearl in her hand. At the same time, a dark green primordial soul escaped in a panic. It turned around and fled into the distance. Ji Tianxing immediately chased after it. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his might. Sky-splitting sword. The sword of burial of heaven released a giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long. It was surrounded by dazzling purple lightning and slashed at the primordial soul of the underworld tree. The underworld tree's original form was a tree demon. It belonged to the wood element and was most afraid of lightning and fire. The underworld orchid was a demonic flower that grew on the underworld tree. It was also afraid of lightning and fire. It was all thanks to the power of the dark green pearl that the two of them could successfully pass through 4 lightning tribulations. Otherwise, they would have been turned into ashes by the lightning tribulations. At this moment, the underworld tree had lost its most precious dark green pearl. Its body was also destroyed, and its power was greatly reduced. When the golden lightning sword slashed at it, it was extremely frightened and panicked. It sped up and fled desperately. Unfortunately, no matter how fast it was, it could not be faster than Ji Tianxing's sword. Bam! With a muffled explosion, the underworld tree's primordial soul was hit by the golden sword and was surrounded by thousands of lightning arcs. Crackling sounds of thunder could be heard. Its primordial soul was torn apart by the lightning and shattered into several pieces. However, its vitality was abnormally strong. It did not die even after its primordial soul was shattered. A few pieces of its primordial soul even gathered together and wanted to reform. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected of the longevity divine pearl. It actually contains such terrifying vitality. The underworld tree has occupied the divine pearl for countless years. Under the baptism of the divine pearl's power, it still has such tenacious vitality. I hope that after Yarrow refines this longevity divine pearl, she can extend her life and greatly increase her lifespan. Chapter 1708. Hundreds of fingernail-sized primordial spirit fragments fell from the sky. The 4th-level Tribulation Transcendence Realm Tree Demon was killed just like that. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a golden light, collecting all the fragments in the sky. A black hole appeared in his right palm and immediately swallowed all the primordial spirit fragments. Since entering the Phantom Mountain Range, we have killed hundreds of demonic beasts. Only these 2 twin flower demons are the strongest. After the burial of heaven devours their primordial spirit fragments, it should be able to recover a lot of primordial spirit, right? With that thought in mind, he turned and flew toward Yun Yarrow. Yun Yarrow was standing in the sky, holding the basin-sized dark cyan pearl with both hands and looking at it with a gratified expression. The round pearl was sparkling and translucent, flickering with a bright cyan light. It was breathing rhythmically as if it had a life of its own. The pearl emitted a majestic aura of life. It was enough to change the world and turn the endless desert into a forest. Ji Tianxing only took a few breaths of the aura of life and felt that his lifespan had increased by a few years. This is the longevity divine pearl, one of the 7 soul divine pearls. What an incredible divine object. Whoever has this divine pearl will definitely be immortal. Yun Yarrow looked up at him and shook her head gently. This is indeed the longevity divine pearl. It is very compatible with my soul and has a close connection. After I fuse with this divine pearl, I will have the 3 souls. I think my lifespan will be extended by many years. However, it is unrealistic to use this divine pearl to achieve immortality. Even a martial god who has just entered the divine Tao can't escape the 10,000-year lifespan limit. If one could gain immortality by obtaining this divine pearl, countless martial gods would fight over it like crazy. This divine pearl won't be here, and it will be impossible for us to obtain it. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. He nodded and said, "That's true. Although the divine pearl is magical, it can't change one's fate. It can't help one break through the 10,000-year limit." Yun Yarrow kept the dark cyan pearl and said with a gratified expression, "Tianxing, we've got the longevity divine pearl. Our trip is considered a success. Let's go, let's return to the Luotian mountain first. I'll slowly refine it." Ji Tianxing nodded and flew out of Flower Valley with her side by side. The two of them flew over the scorched earth and ruins. They saw that the Flower Valley, which was 100 miles wide and 500 miles long, was completely destroyed. A moment later, the two of them were halfway through their flight. At this moment, the entire Flower Valley ruins shook violently as if a super earthquake had occurred. A series of muffled rumbling noises came from the depths of the ground. The ground continued to crack, and huge pits were formed. Countless amounts of soil surged upwards, and black ash and smoke covered the sky. Blood-red flames surged out from the ground, drowning the entire Flower Valley. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow hurriedly flew up into the sky, away from the blood-colored sea of fire. What's going on? The twin flower demons are already dead. Why is there a sudden change in Flower Valley? Yun Yarrow frowned in confusion. Ji Tianxing frowned and observed for a moment. He said in a low voice, "Since this Flower Valley was created by the longevity divine pearl, it's also an evil place full of devil chi. Now that the twin flower demons are dead, the formation protecting Flower Valley has collapsed. Of course, this area will be destroyed. This is good too. If this evil and filthy place is destroyed, there won't be any future troubles." Just as he finished speaking, a series of cracking noises came from the depths of the raging sea of fire. That kind of sound was like the sound of a pile of broken bones rubbing against each other. It made one's hair stand on end. Ji Tianxing's expression changed instantly. A thick murderous aura flashed across his eyes. What a powerful devil chi. Oh no, there's probably a giant demon hiding in the depths of Flower Valley. It's going to wake up now. As he said that, he pulled Yun Yarrow and flew high into the sky. They flew out as fast as lightning. However, endless white bones and skeletons surged out of the surging bloody sea of fire. They surged like a tide and chased out of the Flower Valley. Tens of thousands of white bones and skeletons surged and flowed rapidly. They were about to condense into a giant demon. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow flew to the entrance of Flower Valley, the tide of white bones had also condensed into a white bone giant demon that was hundreds of feet tall. It was as big as a mountain. Not only did this white bone giant demon have a huge body, but it also had strong arms and legs. It also had two huge skulls. Upon closer inspection, its head was formed by tens of thousands of human skulls. Its body was also formed by countless human skeletons. Its entire body was surrounded by a crimson-red light. It rose like a raging flame. It exuded an extremely bloody and evil aura. On its two heads, there were two pairs of deeply sunken eye sockets. 4 balls of bloody fire were jumping in them. Those were its eyes. They contained a powerful demonic power. Crack, crack, crack. The white bone giant demon opened and closed its big mouth. It let out an ear-piercing sound of friction. It grinned coldly. It leaped into the sky and immediately caught up with Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. "You destroyed my habitat and still want to escape? Dream on." The white bone giant demon opened its huge white bone mouth and let out a muffled roar. Its entire body burst out with a murderous aura. As it spoke, it waved its pair of huge white bone palms and unleashed an overwhelming grey fog. It attacked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. The rolling grey fog was like a monstrous flood. It spread in the sky and covered a radius of hundreds of miles. The grey fog was the aura of death. It contained a terrifying corrosive power that could cause life to wither and everything to die. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were enveloped by the grey fog. They were instantly trapped in a grey cage. They could not tell north from south. The formless chi of death immediately attacked their bodies, causing their bodies to wither rapidly and their hair to turn white. In just a few breaths, more than half of their vitality was lost. They turned from young men in the prime of their lives to old and withered white-haired old men. Such a strange and powerful secret art shocked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. They were extremely afraid. Fortunately, Yun Yao quickly took out the longevity divine pearl. She cast a spell and activated the power of the divine pearl. It released 2 dark green light beams. Swish, swish. The dark green light beam drilled into their bodies and immediately replenished their boundless vitality. In the blink of an eye, the two of them turned back from white-haired old man and old woman to young men in their 20s. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb again. He waved his hand and unleashed a giant white sword of light that was 1,000 feet long. It broke a huge crack in the grey fog cage. The grey fog of death was quickly dispersed when it encountered the sacred white light. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao escaped the grey fog cage and continued to fly out of the Flower Valley. Seeing this scene, the white bone giant demon was stunned. The blood-red fire in its 4 white bone eye sockets danced wildly. It obviously did not expect that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could remain in their original state and not be killed by the aura of death. Chapter 1709. The white bone troll was only stunned for a moment before it streaked across the sky and chased after Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Its strength was even more terrifying than the twin flower demons, and its speed was as fast as light. As it flew, a grey fog surged around its body, covering the sky and the sun. Any living thing within 25 miles of it, whether it was flowers, grass, trees, birds, or beasts, would instantly lose their vitality and wither into a pile of black ash. Such a strange and powerful lethality was truly pitilessly terrifying and frightening. In just 10 seconds, the white bone troll had caught up with Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The white bone troll was about to attack again. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and used his ultimate move to attack. Broken Moon Sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and used all his strength to slash out a 1,000-foot-long giant sword. The dark golden giant sword slashed towards the white bone troll with unstoppable power that could kill everything. The power of this sword was enough to split mountains and rivers, and split the land within 50 miles. However, the white bone troll turned a blind eye to it. It waved its hand and shot out a grey fog to meet the golden giant sword. Bam! A deafening sound rang out as the surging grey fog collided with the giant sword, exploding with a dull sound. The grey fog of death did not dissipate and actually blocked the giant sword's power. Soon, the golden giant sword was corroded and dissipated. Ji Tianxing's attack was neutralized, but he was unwilling to give up and stabbed with his sword. Piercing sword. The sword of burial of heaven shot out a cold light that instantly traversed 20 miles in the sky and hit the white bone troll. However, a thick grey fog gathered in front of the white bone troll like a shield. The cold light exploded in the grey fog, and a cold light soared up and covered the sky. The grey fog was shattered by the explosion and scattered in the sky. The white bone troll was not injured at all. It became even more ferocious as it swung its giant white bone palm. Bam! Bam! Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could not dodge in time and were hit by the giant white bone palm. They were sent flying and crashed into the mountains dozens of miles away. Boom! The lush, dark green mountain range was immediately smashed apart by the violent impact, causing dirt and rocks to splatter everywhere. Hundreds of towering trees were also swept away by the shockwave. They fell to the ground uniformly and were crushed into dregs. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao crawled out of the ruins and flew back into the sky, they were already covered in dust and their faces were covered in blood. Both of them were heavily injured. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Tianxing, this giant demon is a 10,000 skeleton demon. It's formed from the bones of tens of thousands of human martial artists over thousands of years. It's extremely terrifying. Its strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It's impossible for us to be its opponent. We can't be entangled with it anymore. We have to find a way to get rid of it. Yun Yao stared at the 10,000 skeleton demon with a solemn expression and secretly transmitted her voice to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and replied to her through voice transmission, "Those tens of thousands of skeletons are the powerhouses who broke into the 100-Flower Valley in the past 1,000 years. The weakest of them is at the Essence Soul realm. There is no lack of Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses among them. This 10,000 skeleton demon not only gathered terrifying demonic power, but also mastered the deadly poison of the 100-Flower Valley. It's an evolved demon. I'm afraid it's not that easy to get rid of it. I have to use more means." As soon as he finished speaking, the 10,000 skeleton demon had already teleported over. It waved a pair of giant white bone fists and smashed them down from the sky. Once the giant white bone fists hit, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow would be smashed to pieces. There was no chance of survival. At the critical moment, Yun Yarrow summoned the Luotian spirit again and was about to inject her magic power into the statue. She had already used it twice before. Now, there was only one chance left. However, Ji Tianxing shouted through voice transmission, Yarrow, don't use the Luotian spirit so easily. Let me deal with it." As he said that, he glared at the 10,000 skeleton demon and shouted in a loud voice, "Thunder." He suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Endless purple divine lightning surged out of the golden eye. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted at the 10,000 skeleton demon. Kaboom! In the next moment, the 1,000-foot-long pillar of divine lightning struck the giant white bone fists with a loud bang. Immediately, the palace-sized giant white bone fists were shattered by the pillar of divine lightning. Dense white bones splattered everywhere. The 10,000 skeleton demon was also enveloped by the dazzling purple lightning. Its body tumbled and flew backward, falling 5 kilometers away. Crackling sounds of thunder rang out. The 10,000 skeleton demon trembled violently. Thousands of white bone fragments scattered all over its body. Soon after, there was another loud plop sound as it smashed into a mountain peak. The 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak was smashed into pieces and turned into a pile of ruins. The 10,000 skeleton demon rolled a few times on the ground and struggled for a moment. It roared a few times before shaking off the lightning arcs all over its body. When it climbed up from the ruins and flew back into the sky, its body was already incomplete. It was still emitting thick black smoke. It looked down at Ji Tianxing from above and shouted angrily, "Damn little reptile, you actually mastered the power of thunder." Although the 10,000 skeleton demon's strength was unparalleled. But everything in this world was about mutual promotion and restraint. The sacred and violent thunder just happened to restrain the evil and filthy 10,000 skeleton demon. Although Ji Tianxing's strength was too low and could only cause some minor injuries and trouble. But this was still an obvious restraint. If Ji Tianxing also had the strength of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, even if he was only at the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he would have absolute confidence in killing the 10,000 skeleton demon. The 10,000 skeleton demon twisted its body and waved its hands to release grey fog. It sucked the broken bones scattered in the ruins into its palms. Then, it stuffed the messy broken bones into the wounds all over its body. After a series of cracking noises, its body was restored to its original state. Crack, crack, crack. Little reptile, so what if you control thunder? Your realm is too low. You're like an ant. How can you compete with me? Accept your death obediently. Your corpses will become a part of my body. The 10,000 skeleton demon grinned and laughed loudly. Its tone was extremely arrogant and savage. Wrapped in the grey fog that filled the sky, it rushed towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow again. This time, it waved its palms and used a secret technique. It controlled the grey fog that filled the sky and condensed hundreds of grey blades, sealing off the area within a 50-mile radius. Dead Soul Ghost Blade. Each Dead Soul Ghost Blade was 1,000 feet long and contained an extremely terrifying aura of death, as if it came from the netherworld. Hundreds of ghost blades stabbed at the same time, locking onto the auras of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow's primordial spirits, leaving them nowhere to hide. Once they were hit by the Dead Soul Ghost Blade, their primordial spirits would immediately be destroyed and they would die on the spot. At this critical moment, Yun Yarrow no longer hesitated. She hurriedly channeled her majestic magic power and injected it into the ice crystal statue. Chapter 1710. In order to save her life, Yoon Yarrow did not hesitate to use the Luotian spirit. This was the third time she had used it, and it would also be the last time. Bam! 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 Hundreds of undead ghost blades hit the icy blue light shield, producing a series of dull sounds. The light shield trembled continuously from the attacks, and ripples appeared, but it did not shatter. Cracks began to appear on the ice crystal statue in Yoon Yarrow's hand, and it began to make cracking sounds. Pieces of ice crystals peeled off from the statue and scattered on the ground. In a few seconds, the entire ice crystal statue would shatter, and the icy blue light shield would also dissipate. At the same time, Ji Tianxing took out a white talisman from his interspatial ring. This white talisman contained vast and mighty spatial power. It was a tribulation-grade transference talisman. The universal treasure box that Hong Chengtian gave Ji Tianxing contained more than 30 talismans with different effects. When Ji Tianxing encountered Ghost Child for the first time in the Arctic abyss, he had used the transference talisman to escape. Now, he and Yoon Yarrow were forced into a dead end again, and they could only use this talisman to escape. A vast amount of dharmic power surged from his fingertips, and he injected it into the transference talisman. Swoosh! The transference talisman was immediately activated, and golden flames ignited. The entire talisman turned into a ball of dense white light, and it immediately condensed into a white door of light in mid-air. This was a spatial portal that could teleport people thousands of miles away in an instant. Yarrow, let's go. Ji Tianxing grabbed Yoon Yarrow's wrist and entered the spatial portal as fast as the wind. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the two of them disappeared into the portal of light. In the next moment, the two of them could teleport to somewhere thousands of miles away through the portal and escape the pursuit of the 10,000 skeletal demon. However, things did not go as planned. The power of the 10,000 skeletal demon was beyond Ji Tianxing and Yoon Yarrow's imagination. Just as the two of them stepped into the portal and were about to disappear, the icy blue light shield shattered into pieces. Hundreds of millions of ice shards fell from the sky. The 10,000 skeletal demon's figure flashed, and it rushed to the portal. It raised its arms as fast as lightning, and a dazzling blood-red light shot out as it fiercely slammed into the white door of light. Kaboom! The white door of light had not dissipated before it was shattered by the 10,000 skeletal demon's attack. The spatial power was instantly disrupted. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yoon Yarrow had already entered the darkness and passed through the spatial tunnel, leaving this place. Unfortunately, after the spatial energy was disrupted, the spatial tunnel began to shake violently and quickly crumbled. No one could be sure what would happen next and where the two of them would be teleported to. It might be somewhere hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, or hundreds of miles under the ground. There was also the possibility that the two of them would be lost in the layers of alternate spaces, never to return to the Shunwu continent. The only thing he could be sure of was that the space tunnel had been destroyed. It was impossible for the two of them to teleport safely thousands of miles away. In the next moment, somewhere in the dark underground, a cluster of dazzling white light suddenly burst out from the layers of rocks. Bam! Following a loud, muffled sound, the white light blossomed and blasted a 3 feet wide hole in the hard brown rock layer. The white light was dazzling, and gravel flew everywhere. Two battered and exhausted figures rushed out of the big hole and crashed into the rock layer. The unparalleled force of impact shattered the rock layers within a radius of 10,000 feet, turning them into a huge cave. The two figures crashed into the ruins and were buried by the falling gravel. After a full 10 seconds, the two figures let out painful groans and struggled to climb out of the rubble. The first to climb out of the rubble was a young man in ragged clothes with disheveled hair. He was Ji Tianxing, without a doubt. He was covered in blood, and he staggered toward another pile of rubble with a black and ancient broken sword in his hand. Yarrow, how are you? His bloodshot eyes searched the rubble, and he called out anxiously and worriedly. In the rubble 100 steps away, Yoon Yarrow coughed violently a few times before climbing out of the rubble. Her white dress was fluttering in the wind, and she looked like a holy fairy. But now, she was covered in wounds, and her long hair was messy. She looked very miserable. The blood mixed with the soil, staining her white dress and covering her face. She bent over and gasped for breath, and blood kept flowing out of her nose and mouth. Ji Tianxing limped over and hurriedly supported her to check her injuries. The result was indisputable. Yun Yaro was seriously injured like him. When the spatial tunnel collapsed, the explosion and the power of spacefolding almost crushed their bodies. Fortunately, they were talented and had special constitutions, which saved their lives. But their essence souls were seriously injured, and their bodies were covered in wounds. Their internal organs were also shattered and displaced, and blood kept flowing out. Ji Tianxing hurriedly took out a few healing pills and gave half of them to Yun Yaro. After the pills entered her stomach, they quickly released a strong medicinal effect under the catalysis of magic power. Their injuries were under control, and their aura and strength gradually stabilized. Yun Yaro raised her hand to wipe the blood and soil off her face. She looked around and asked weakly, "Tianxing, where are we?" Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that it was pitch black. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. After a while, he checked the situation clearly. His face immediately changed, and he frowned. "We are 50 miles underground. Above us is a piece of scorched earth and ruins. It seems to be the place where we fought with the twin flower demons." Yun Yaro also frowned and said in a complicated tone, "What? We are back in the Flower Valley, and we are deep underground." Ji Tianxing nodded and said angrily, "Originally, my great shift talisman could help us teleport thousands of miles, and easily get rid of the 10,000 skeletal demons. I didn't expect the 10,000 skeletal demons to destroy the teleportation door and the spatial tunnel. Under a freak combination of factors, we couldn't control the direction of our teleportation, and we actually appeared here. We really underestimated the 10,000 skeletal demons." Yun Yaro comforted him and said, "The spatial tunnel was destroyed. Most of the martial artists would have been killed by the explosion, or they would be lost in the folded space and disappear forever. We are already very lucky to be able to survive. Moreover, the 10,000 skeletal demons wouldn't expect us to return to the underground of the Flower Valley. This place is thousands of miles away from it. We have enough time to leave before it comes back." Ji Tianxing nodded. He pointed at a cave entrance 300 meters away and said, "There's a cave over there. I've checked it just now. There's a passage outside the cave. Let's go out from there."